9/11, 9/11. And 9 plus 11 is, thank you, Eric, is 20 seconds. So for a moment of remembrance and memorial for those that we've lost and for those of the fighters that are still here with us today fighting a good fight, I'd like for all of us to take a moment, take 20 seconds, have a moment of silence. Thank you. Let me see, we have a quorum? Yes, we do. I want to introduce myself. My name is Harry Spikes. I am the chairman for this great commission. What I'm going to do now is allow everyone to introduce themselves and also the staff, starting from my left.
Eric Holcomb, Executive Director.
Ann Powell, Commissioner representing Greater Baltimore Committee.
Tamara Woods, Commissioner representing DHCD.
Gary Rodwell, Commissioner representing the Preservation Community and Coppin Heights Community Development Corporation.
Sarah Langmead, Commissioner.
Catherine Good, Commissioner.
Kapal Lynn, Commissioner. John Bullock, City Council Representative to CHAP.
Garrett Power, Commissioner representing Baltimore City Historical Society.
Myra Mendeleev, Commissioner.
Peter Morrill, Commissioner.
Tyreek Charlouse, CHAP staff.
Lauren Chiswick, CHAP staff.
Thank you. The CHAP mission is to enhance and promote the cultural and economy of the Baltimore through the preservation of buildings, structures, sites, and neighborhoods that have aesthetic, historic, and architectural value. The goals of CHAP include preserving historic architecture and monuments, reclaiming broken neighborhoods, preventing demolition by neglect, and integrating our city's past into its future. So before we move forward, we have a few housekeeping rules. There is a sheet that was outside, and the sheet looks like this. If you wish to speak, please sign the sheet, and you will be called. We use this as an opportunity to make sure that we have everyone gets a chance to speak during some of the topics. Now, here's the thing. You have 3 minutes to speak. I usually do this at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That means you have 30 more seconds to speak. Very rarely do we use the gavel, but if we do, that means you have to sit down. If your cell phone rings, I want to remind you all to please put it on vibrate or silent. If you have to take a phone call, by all means, take it outside. And if you have any conversation amongst yourself that you need to have or that you want to have, please take it outside as well. And then on top of that, those who speak on the podium, they are called upon based on the list. We ask that no one speak out of turn because you have to be recognized in order to speak. So thank you once again for attending. I would like to make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I would like to make a motion to adapt the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Due process. CHAP reviews applications in conjunction with the building permit process of the permit section of the Department of Housing and Community Development. If a building permit application is filed prior to historic design review, the application is placed on hold pending completion of the CHAP review process. The review process is completed by issuing an authorization to proceed. The historic design review process is in addition to other applicable laws and regulations and does not diminish the force of urban renewal plans, building codes, zoning codes, etc. It is the applicant's responsibility to comply with all applicable laws, regulations, and codes. Proposed projects are reviewed prior to issuing a building permit. Applicants must comply with the Baltimore City Historic Preservation Design Guidelines in planning and executing their projects. Design review considers the proposed work, taking into consideration the historical and architectural character of the structure and of the immediate area. Applicants will need to clearly explain how their project complies with the design guidelines. Major projects. In order to expedite the application process, the Commission has delegated review authority to the Executive Director for cases involving minor work. Minor projects must significantly change the overall appearance or remove the significant undamaged historic fabric. All minor work must clearly meet the design guidelines. Major projects. Major projects may change the overall character, appearance, and integrity of the structure. Substantial building alterations, demolitions, additions, and new constructions are considered major projects and are reviewed at a public hearing. Interested parties should request a pre-development meeting in the planning department to begin the review process. An electronic version of all materials must be submitted to the CHAP staff at least 25 calendar days prior to the public hearing date. If the application is complete, the project shall be scheduled for a public hearing. CHAP hearings. At the public hearing, CHAP staff presents recommendations to the commission regarding the project. Following the staff presentation, the applicant may make a presentation to the commission. Interested parties, including neighborhood associations, have the opportunity to provide public testimony. Following testimony, the commission renders a decision on the application at the public hearing. Persons aggrieved by the decision of the commission may seek judicial and appellate review in accordance with the Baltimore City Code. After an authorization to proceed is issued, the applicant may obtain a building permit. The commission's process is impartial, and staff's comments are evidence that assist the commission in rendering decisions. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the final agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd also like to see if we can make a motion for our special hearing minutes.
Approve the special hearing minutes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Let us begin. First, was? Did you say anything, John? Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. You said anything?
You're in both columns for for and abstaining. For which one? On CHAP, on the BGE.
Oh, good. Okay. We'll make that correction. Thank you. Appreciate that. First on our list, we have 3110 Elm Avenue, requested designated as a potential Baltimore City landmark. The applicant is Odette Ramos, forgive me, and the staff is Lauren.
Good afternoon, Commission. This has been a long time coming. I think I've posted for this like 7 times. So I'm very happy to be moving this forward. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the site and then move into the history and then why we're here today. This parcel is located in the southwest portion of the Hamden neighborhood overlooking the Jones Falls River Valley. The property and the immediately surrounding blocks were all owned by the Mount Vernon Mill Company until various points in the early 20th century. This is the parcel here. On the east side of Elm Avenue, the development pattern is residential, dominated by 2-story 1920s brick daylight row houses with front porches overlooking yards. The Florence Crittenden home, which is a Baltimore City landmark and Maryland Historical Trust easement property, is located immediately east of 3110 Elm. This is a historic photo of the Florence Crittenden mansion. It was originally a mansion house that was owned by, it was the home of the mill owner for Mount Vernon Mill, and was later became a home for unwed mothers, and there was a 1920s dormitory addition added to it. Between 2018 and 2020, 3-story brick row houses were constructed to the west and north of the mansion house, and these row houses were approved both by CHAP and the Maryland Historical Trust and stylistically drew on the neighborhood's architectural context, including the row houses on Elm Avenue, which were designed to reflect the industrial architectural details of the property that we are going to be discussing today, 3110 Elm. On the west side of Elm Avenue, the buildings are largely 1 to 3-story brick or concrete industrial buildings that are largely utilitarian in design. 3001 Elm Avenue was originally an outbuilding constructed in the late 19th century to serve the mansion house, and the rest of the buildings on the 3100 and 3200 blocks of Elm and Falls Cliff Road were constructed between 1930 and 1956. The former Noxzema factory on Falls Cliff Road, now known as the Fox Building, was recently converted into housing and artist studios. So there's quite a diversity of architectural style and context in the immediately surrounding neighborhood. This brick industrial building is located on a lot that is 200 feet wide by 143 feet deep. It has 3 street fronting primary elevations, with the primary facade facing east on the 2100 block of Elm Avenue. The other elevations facing towards Falls Cliff Road to the west and to 32nd Street to the north. The east elevation fronting Elm Avenue is 2 stories tall, and the west elevation is 3 stories. So there's quite a change in the elevation between those properties. The 3 elevations are detailed with brickwork, cast concrete, limestone, as you can see here. This is the Elm Avenue elevation, which serves as the primary entrance to the building. And you can see some of these decorative details, which though it's a very simple building, it really has a lot of rhythm and detailing to it. This is the 32nd Street elevation, which you can see it sort of runs from 2 stories to 3 stories, but sort of maintains those very horizontal lines to it. And this is the Falls Cliff Road elevation. And while it has seen some infilling on the first floor, it still maintains a lot of integrity. This is the south elevation, which isn't facing a public street and so is very simple in design. Attached to the south elevation, there's a 2-story tall brick L located at the center bay of that elevation, and it has loading docks facing both Elm and Falls Cliff Road. It houses a boiler room, has a brick chimney that rises an additional 40 feet above the building, which is very visible from many blocks away due to the topography of the area. And the chimney is also home to migrating chimney swifts in the spring and fall. A little bit about the property. The property at 3110 Elm was part of the land holdings of the Mount Vernon Company since the 1850s, if not earlier. Their company lands were extensive, as you can see from this map here. It included not just the 2 mill buildings, but also mill worker housing, the mill owner's house, now Florence Curtin and Home, and other surrounding property. This property was the tract of the home of David Carroll, who is the owner and founder of the Mount Vernon Mills. And you can see this is it in 1914. It's still, very much a rural landscape. But following a labor strike in 1923, the Mount Vernon Mill Company sold off a lot of property, including Clipper Mill, David Carroll's house, and the majority of its workers' housing. And then in 1929, additional property was sold off, including the parcel that we're discussing today. So this parcel was purchased in 1930. And at the beginning of the Great Depression, the owner, John H. Ferguson, constructed the factory that is there today with a reported investment of $225,000 in 1930 dollars, which was a lot of money back then. The architect of the factory was Frederick Thomas, who was a Baltimore architect who at that time had really done a lot of work in the posh, exclusive neighborhoods and exclusionary neighborhoods of Guilford, Homeland, and Bologna Giddings, and ultimately designed a wide variety of buildings. The building has housed several industries over the past 90 years. The English-American Tailoring Company rented the building. That company is now over 100 years old and is based in Westminster, Maryland. From 1937 to 1974, this factory housed the Monumental Printing Company, and John H. Ferguson, who constructed the factory, was the president of that company. It was also rented to other businesses, so it sort of, was sort of designed to be flexible in terms of the utilization of space. In order to understand how this structure and the history that it exemplifies sort of is significant, we need to talk a little bit about the history of industry in Baltimore and how this building is an example of an important shift in industry in the 20th century. From the 1800s through the end of World War II, the textile industry was the dominant industry in Hamden, with the Hooper and Mount Vernon mills serving as the largest employers. And Mount Vernon Mill number 1 and number 3 served as the headquarters for this company, which was one of the world's largest manufacturers of cotton duck. And it played a significant role in Baltimore's textile industry for over 100 years, from 1847 until shutting down in 1972. In 1947, the Mount Vernon Manufacturing Company was created to make cotton duck, and they constructed a mill village with a company store, a church, and housing for workers and their families. And in many ways, it's very similar to sort of the mill villages of New England. And the structure of these villages made the workers and their families fully reliant upon the companies for their livelihood, their housing, their education, which of course also made it far riskier for workers to strike or organize because they could lose their homes and social networks along with their jobs. So it was intentionally designed as a total institution. But there was some labor organizing in the last quarter of the 19th century in Hamden and Woodbury, and organizing increased significantly during World War I. And labor historian Bill Harvey credits this in part to the financial boon of the war demand for cotton duck, when mill owners' profits were high and they were more likely to concede to their workers' demands regarding pay, hours, and working conditions. In 1916, the textile workers number 977 of Hamden negotiated a 5% wage increase for all workers in recognition of the union by the Mount Vernon mills, with both successes heralded by the Labor Leader, which is the newspaper of the Baltimore Federation of Labor. There were two subsequent strikes in 1917 and 1918 that resulted in some more wins for the workers, but those were short-lived. The decline of the cotton mills in Hamden Woodbury started in the 1920s because there was a declining market for cotton duck. There was disputes between the mill management and workers over the fair pay and hours. And following a strike in 1923, management started moving their operations to southern states, which had lower wages and weaker labor laws. And in retaliation for the strike of 1923, the company sold off the company-owned housing, where workers previously lived for free, and also sold off other property that they owned, including this property that we're discussing today. So while the cotton duck industry declined in the 1920s, industry as a whole boomed in Baltimore, likely building off of the World War I industrial production and the 1918 annex that tripled the area of the city, encompassing suburban and rural land. Companies began moving their factories further out of downtown Baltimore into more residential settings and onto cheaper land. And according to historian Sherry Olson, the changes in industry were part of a larger revisioning of the city where industry would be set in a park, workers and neighbors would enjoy daylight houses and clean air. And so the new factories constructed in these more residential parts of the city were built with reinforced concrete, featuring walls of glass windows and metal frames that housed relatively clean industries that utilized machine power more than human power. And so while the buildings often had a large floor plate, the density of workers in the factories were comparable to the density of people in the surrounding residential communities. And so this represented a huge change both in the working conditions for factory workers, but also how those factories impacted the communities in which they were located. And so this factory at 3110 Elm is representative of that pattern of industrial development in terms of the building itself, in terms of its location in Hamden, and in terms of the types of industries located in the building. This building was built for John H. Ferguson, who was the president of the Monumental Printing Company, as I mentioned before. What's interesting is he previously worked as a printer and then became engaged in union organizing and served as the president of two different labor federations, including the Baltimore Federation of Labor. And he was the editor of the Labor Leader, the publication that was helping, tout organizing. So what's interesting is that he actually kind of changed sides. He ended up leaving labor and became an owner. And so this actually, his business was the site of further labor organizing and unionizing against him as an owner. So it sort of, again, represents sort of a shift in the narrative. Councilmember Ramos initiated the potential landmark designation request in September 2022 and formally requested the designation in November 2022. And this was in response to a development proposal to demolish the structure and construct a 155-unit apartment building on the site. The potential landmark designation hearing has been postponed several times due to negotiations with a potential buyer for the property. The proposal is to designate this property as a potential Baltimore City landmark. The potential landmark list provides an immediate but temporary protection for historically significant properties, and notably the protections of the landmark list being placed on the landmark list begins as soon as the notice for the CHAP hearing is posted. If the property is designated to the potential landmark list, the timeframe of the protections are limited as shown here. If the property is designated to the landmark list, is designated to the Baltimore City landmark list, then it will continue to receive the full protections of the CHAP ordinance. If it is not added, it cannot be nominated for potential landmark list or landmark list again until 2 years after the date from when the proposal failed or the designation expired, election and start of new 4-year terms of office for the members of City Council, or the City Council's passage of a simple resolution requesting or authorizing the Commission to do so. For requests to designate properties as potential landmarks or Baltimore City landmarks, CHAP staff applies the guidelines for the designation of properties as Baltimore City landmarks, which considers the following criteria regarding the quality of significance in Baltimore history, architecture, archaeology, engineering and culture, present in districts, sites, buildings, public interior structures, and objects that possess integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, association, and either one or more of 4 criteria that are associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of Baltimore history, or are associated with the lives of persons significant in Baltimore's past, or embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or that represent the work of a master, or that possess high artistic values, or that represent a significant indistinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction, or have yielded or may be likely to yield information important in Baltimore prehistory or history. Staff has determined that the designation of this property as a potential Baltimore City landmark meets criteria 1 and 3 for its association with events in Baltimore's broad pattern of history, and for 3, essentially architecture. The property is not located within a CHAP district, but staff notified community associations in the vicinity of the property. Over 24 letters have been submitted to CHAP regarding this property. All of the letters are supportive of landmark designation, with many letters expressing concern about the migratory chimney swifts and a few opposing demolition of the building. And Councilmember Ramos, I know, is here to testify as well. Staff has determined that the building at 3110 Elm, I'm naming it the Monumental Printing Company Factory, meets 2 of the 4 designation criteria, 1 and 3. For the reasons stated, just in summary, the Monumental Printing Company Factory, a brick industrial building constructed in 1930 for John H. Ferguson in Hamden, is an excellent example of the post-World War I industrial development in the residential neighborhoods in Baltimore City. This development pattern became a strong economic force and character-defining element in many neighborhoods in the city. The property represents the industrial diversification in Hamden, when many of the long-standing industries were becoming obsolete, and showing how Hamden reinvented itself from a 19th century industrial mill village to an industrial city neighborhood in the 20th century. This property is an excellent example of 1920s and 1930s industrial architecture, and the building is largely unchanged from 1930 and retains sufficient integrity to convey its historic association. Thank you, Commissioners. Any questions?
Lauren, thank you. Commissioners, we have any questions? Yes.
Lauren, is there the potential for more buildings that surround this building to be considered for district designation?
Absolutely, yeah. And the National Register nominations that was done for Hamden really focused on the residential architecture and didn't really focus on sort of industrial heritage that was more modern. And so I think that there's certainly an opportunity for that to be revised.
Any other commissioners? Yes, Peter.
Do we have any other interwar year industrial buildings on the landmark list?
Not that I'm aware of. I can check, but I don't believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Lauren, thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my colleague. This is the 3rd time I'm before you, actually, to designate properties in my district. The first was in Coldstream Homestead, Montebello, a school. The second was in this neighborhood, 3818 Roland. And now this one. I obviously believe very strongly in preserving our history. I think it really does make Baltimore what Baltimore is. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to ask your support in designating this this property historic. You heard the reasons. I believe that those are certainly valid. It certainly makes a lot of sense considering that you've already designated several properties around it as historic. And so it would be consistent in doing so. Obviously, the unique history so that we can preserve it, and the building itself. Related to the development, we are working with the owner who is not here and is not opposing designation to be able to have something in that building. They do want to sell it. And we're working with them to make sure that, and they are positive and feel good about the opportunity for that transaction, and that we'll be working with the community on whatever ends up happening with the building. So I do have residents here who would testify on the chimney swifts, which, by the way, if you haven't been to see, please do see. It is really a pretty amazing phenomenon that the chimney swifts, literally birds going into the chimney and coming back out, are pretty amazing. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner, any questions for the Councilwoman? Okay, Councilwoman, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we have many people signed the form, but only one person wanted to testify. And we have a Beth Braun. Beth, are you here?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I must have made a mistake on the form. I'm here for a later one.
Okay. Yes, your apology accepted. You're good.
Confused by the form.
You're good. You're good. You're good. So with that being said, I will bring it to our commissioners. Commissioners for
Mr.
Yes,
Chair, I'm
ma'am.
sorry, we do have Ms. Alice Greeley. Were you going to testify? Yes, you are. Yep, come on. You're coming.
If you'd like to. And Alice, when you come up, give us your full name, please, and spell it for us.
Alice Greeley Nelson.
Okay. Spell your last name again, because I had it.
Greeley, Greely.
Thank you.
And then Nelson.
Nelson, gotcha. Okay, go right ahead.
Oh, well, I wasn't expecting to do this, but I will do as best as I have been monitoring the chimney that is connected to the building itself for the last 35 years for the migratory birds coming up the Chesapeake Bay and coming up the Jones Falls. And that chimney is a predominant, one of the largest chimneys in the state of Maryland for the bird migration. I've counted up to 7,000 birds in that chimney, and it has slowly been decreasing in the years with the impact of the environment. And so we send all of the reports up to Cornell, who has been monitoring the development of the chimney swifts because they go from Brazil all the way up to Canada. A few of them breed here in Baltimore, but the birds that you see going down the chimney in the evenings are birds coming from Canada all the way down. So in this next couple of weeks, you will see thousands of them going in in these huge industrial chimneys. Many of the industrial chimneys now have been capped. We had 3 buildings. There was one in Mill Center, there was one at the Crittenden, and this one that the chimney swifts have been using. But the one at Mill Center was capped and the one at Crittenden was capped. So this is the only one that is on the Jones Falls at this time that the chimney swifts are using. So it's a very important chimney for migratory birds. So, any questions?
Thank you. Appreciate it. So there's no one else. Back to our commissioners. The recommendation that we have, before we get to our recommendation, do we want to have any discussion amongst us?
I'd like more information about what a potential landmark, Baltimore City landmark. What a potential Baltimore City landmark is.
Okay.
What does it mean, potential?
Potential means that it's different from a Baltimore City landmark designation. A potential landmark designation means that this commission, through posting and having a hearing, can place a property on the potential landmark list. And what that does is that gives that property the CHAP protections for 6 months. I think it's 6 months. And within that 6 months, if there is a city council ordinance that's introduced, then that protections will extend for another 18 months. So it's a temporary protection on buildings in Baltimore City. And most of the potential landmark designations, we work hard to make sure that they turn into Baltimore City landmarks.
That's correct. I will be introducing.
Council, I'm sorry. Council, we had to be recognized. I'm sorry. Come on, go right ahead.
Thank you. My apologies, Mr. Chair.
This happens.
I do intend to introduce an ordinance to create this as a permanent Baltimore City landmark. We wanted to go through the the potential landmark process first.
Does anyone have any more questions for the councilwoman? Go ahead, Garrett.
I think I have a question perhaps to Ms. Ramos.
Go right ahead.
Perhaps to the council. It seems as if the underlying choice here, the public choice, is between 55 apartments and the preservation of this building. How does this choice get made? We are making, I think, a wise decision that this is an interesting building, but the public choice is really, should it be a building or should it be 55 apartments? How is that, who makes that choice? How is that decision made? That's a hypothetical question.
You wanted to respond? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good question. The proposal initially was 155 apartments. In this case, just so you know, the developer who had made that proposal has pulled out of the project. So the choice is made. There will be obviously some other new development there, but it would have because the building will be protected with your help, it would be a different type of development.
Sir, you had your hand up? Okay. Doctor, go right ahead.
Will the chimney stay open?
That is the goal, is to keep the chimney. Any development partner would understand that fully, that has to stay.
Okay. If there are not any more questions, the recommendation that we have on the floor is for 3110 Elm Avenue. Staff recommends a finding of approval for the designation of this property as a potential Baltimore City landmark. Does someone want to put that motion on the floor?
Yes, I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Yes, sir. Do I have a second?
To beat you. It's my neighborhood.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have Frederick Douglass High School, 2301 Gwynns Falls Parkway, a Baltimore City landmark request, concept hearing construction, 3 additions and site work. The owner, mayor, and city council, Baltimore City Public School System. Applicant, F. Thomas Lee, and Samaya, forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, architects. Staff is Lauren.
Thank you, Chair. I know the commission has seen this a few times, so just going to breeze through some of the introductory information. This is the general location of the property, the parcel in red. Here's an aerial photograph showing the bounds of the property. One thing I do just want to bring to your attention, just because we're going to talk about it, is this is Warwick Avenue right here on the west side, and this is Gwynns Falls Parkway. And those are important just because they have to do with some of the design proposal that we'll be talking about. So I just wanted to orient you. So this is the historic entrance to the school that is not functional anymore. Building was built in the 1920s in the Collegiate Gothic Revival style. And these are just some of the aerials of the existing conditions. This is the 1954 Sanborn map. Sorry, let me get to my notes. As you may remember, the commission has considered this twice. In April 23, the commission approved the demolition of 2 features, 2 additions, and then in June 2023, the commission, in a demo hearing 2, approved the demolition of 2 other features, the smokestack and the 1950s addition. All 4 of those features are circled here. In August 2023, the proposed site work and additions, which are being presented to you today, a little altered, was presented to the Urban Design and Architectural Advisory Panel, UDAP, for advisory comments and feedback. You know, with a significant project like this that has a lot of landscape alterations and sort of site planning, we like to we like to coordinate with UDAP, as we've mentioned before, and let UDAP, have design comments on sort of the larger scale aspect of this. So that happened in August. The design team made some updates to the proposal based on the comments, and that is what you're going to be seeing today. Oh, sorry, let me go back. So you can see the applicant proposes to construct 3 additions and complete site work on the property. 2 additions are proposed for the east elevation of the building, 1 on the west. I'm going to sort of walk through each of the additions and their associated site work, and then walk through the other pieces of site work. Just to start you off, another thing that's I think important to know is just the varied topography of the site. They're working with some difficult conditions, site conditions, particularly located on Warwick Avenue right here at the proposed site of the new Briscoe School. There's a pretty significant grade change and very steep elevation. So I'm just bringing that to your attention because that does play a factor in the proposal. So you can see just here the 3 proposed additions on the site plan. And then this is just some sight lines sort of showing how the new additions sort of fit into the building, particularly focusing on the Joseph Briscoe Academy new addition. So this is the current conditions of the main entrance for the students, which is located on the east elevation and is accessible from a circular, a horseshoe drop-off. The intention behind this addition is to expand the footprint of the primary addition for students, so it will become the primary entrance for everyone accessing Douglas. Currently, there's a separate entrance for teachers and visitors. It's in a different wing of the building. It's very difficult to sort of orient yourself. So these are some of the studies sort of showing the sort of how the design team explored adding an addition that is still that is modern, in alignment, and respectful to the building. The proposal is that the face of the addition will project out at an angle that makes the entrance more visible from Gwynns Falls Parkway. The addition will be brick, features large storefront windows. You can see here, so it's designed so that you can see it from Gwynns Falls Parkway because the vast majority of the students who attend Douglas actually arrive to Douglas by arriving to Mendowman Mall and then crossing Gwynns Falls Parkway to go into the building. And so just really making it a very widening, the sidewalk, making it as visible as possible while still being attached to the front of or attached to the side of the building in a way that is still respectful. So it's sort of a complicated, it's difficult way it's a difficult site condition, and I think that they're doing a really thoughtful job. So this is the view from a new proposed plaza. We'll talk more about that later, but sort of showing how this rectilinear addition will be viewed. It's brick and features large storefront windows between vertical precast masonry columns capped by a large projecting metal canopy. This is another view of it. Again, here's a view from the loop. And this is a view from the sidewalk that the vast majority of the students will be utilizing to walk to that main entrance. And you can see here that the proposal is going to be shrinking the drop-off loop that is adjacent to the student entrance. It's currently like at least twice as large. And so then they would create a larger entrance plaza for pedestrians, for students to use, a much smaller drop-off loop, and then increase the parking lot for visitors and teachers. Again, because the majority of the students arrive to the school from Mandamin, the emphasis is really sort of making that a much more pedestrian-friendly experience that you can see here. The applicant also proposes the commission has already approved the demolition of this existing stair tower that is not ADA accessible. So this will be demolished and a new stair and elevator tower will be constructed in the same location as the existing stair tower. It will also be brick and have a metal canopy and storefront windows that you can see. Oh, sorry, let me go back. And then the third addition is, sorry, let me get to it. The proposal for a large, modern, two-story addition on the west elevation of the building facing Warwick Street, which will serve the Douglas Briscoe Academy. These are sort of the current configuration of the addition of the existing addition that is going to be demolished, and then on the lower portion you can see sort of what the historic elevation of that elevation of the Douglas High School looks like. And so you can see here, this is the proposal for the addition. A portion, so it's a two-story addition, but as you can see, there's sort of it almost looks like a third story popping up above. That is actually just a taller portion of the second-story addition. That is the gymnasium wing, and so it just needs to be taller in order to provide daylight. It is set back from the facade pretty significantly, though, so you're not going to be able to see that from Warwick. Due to the significant changes of grade and location, the addition is built into a hillside, which you can see here, and the addition lightly wraps around the historic Douglas building. The interior of the addition will connect with the Douglas building. Briscoe Academy will utilize some of the classrooms, and again, addition will be brick, and the entrance is comparable to the main entrance at Douglas, which you can see here. And it will have, the facade will largely be masonry, although there will be tall blank spandrel panels between the first and second floor, sort of being evocative of the fenestration patterns of Douglas. There's also a little bit of site work proposed. Let me just, the building materials, the team, while this is a concept, the team wanted to sort of give the commission as much information about their proposal and sort of their design intent as possible. And so what they did was they looked at sort of the existing palette of the materials on the school, on the historic school, and assessed them, and then sort of proposed materials and a palette that draws from the historic building and is evocative of it, but clearly doesn't replicate it, because that's always a balance that we have to achieve with putting new things on old buildings. So again, the site work, I talked about a little bit of that, but let's just go through it a little bit. So along with the new addition for Briscoe, there's also going to be a proposed entrance plaza sidewalks, new drop-off loop, with a few ADA and visitor parking spaces on Warwick to serve the new Briscoe Academy, which you can see here. Again, the topography here is very challenging. But, so they're trying to address multiple needs by putting the parking and the drop-off loop and the pedestrian walkways there. Another proposal for the landscape is the historic entrance. So the existing historic entrance to Douglas is not used as an entrance. And so they face sort of the challenge of how do we still honor it without perhaps encouraging people to walk there. And currently there is a very grand staircase and very wide sidewalks, multiple sidewalks leading to that entrance, and then you can't get in. So what they propose doing is removing some of that, removing some of the walkways, shrinking the remaining walkways, and making the entrance, put a small gathering space with seating and plantings to sort of make it a space that people can access, but sort of make it clear that it is not an entrance to the building anymore. Adjacent to Gwynns Falls Parkway, a little bit to the east, there's a proposal for a memorial grove in front of the blank wall of the auditorium. So to put a sort of a ceremonial grove to, again, sort of engage the landscape and make for a more friendly pedestrian experience. Another proposal is to utilize the courtyard of the south courtyard of the school in a different way. Currently, it is fenced-in, gated tennis courts. Obviously, you need to fence in tennis courts, but it's not a very friendly experience. And so the proposal is to move the tennis courts over to the to the existing fields where there's ample room for them, and to better utilize this space as a learning commons. An outdoor learning center for the students, as you can see here. And then there's also a proposal to do a similar outdoor learning space for the students at Briscoe Academy in an existing green space just north of where their proposed addition is going to go, which is currently pretty underutilized space. So this section should go pretty quickly now that I've talked through the whole proposal. The application to design guidelines, 1.17, alterations and additions. Staff finds that the proposal meets the design guideline because the proposal will retain character-defining features of the historic building. The proposed additions are compatible with the historic building in massing, height, form, and scale. And while they are contemporary in design, they are compatible with and visually subservient to the historic building. For guideline 2.1, guiding principles for new design, staff believes that the proposal meets these design guidelines because the additions are contemporary but compatible, drawing on the building's horizontal and vertical elements and detailing. The additions will utilize brick and cast stone, which are also utilized in Douglas High School, but the color palette will be more muted in order to differentiate old and new. 2.2, site design. Staff believes that the proposal meets the design guideline. Douglas High School entrance addition on the east elevation expands the footprint of the existing three-door entrance. It serves as the current student entrance of the school. And while the addition fronts on the vehicular circle and plaza, it's angled toward Gwynns Falls Parkway, thus making the entrance more visible than the existing entrance. The Briscoe Academy addition faces Warwick Street, replacing an older addition that also had an entrance facing that street. For 2.3, scale and form, staff believes that the proposal largely meets the guidelines and that the scale of the three additions are compatible with the school, all are visually subservient to the historic building, and the additions complement the massing. Staff believes that the facade of the Briscoe Academy addition doesn't fully respect the characteristic fenestration of Douglas High School, which has groupings of tall windows within cast stone bays on its, on all the elevations. And so staff recommends that the architects refine the sizes and detailing of the window bays on the Briscoe Academy facade, and the dimensions of the windows in the bays and the size of the blank spandrel panels. Just to, there's a lot of blank space on that elevation that is, I think could be tweaked to be a bit more evocative, still modern, but a bit more complementary to the historic Douglas building. 4.2.1, site context. Proposal meets the design guidelines. The existing topography is being retained as much as possible. The open space at the front of Douglas High School is being retained and enhanced, and open spaces are being more fully utilized with the introduction of the outdoor learning spaces for both schools. For 4.2.3, streets, alleys, and parking. Many of these guidelines aren't pertinent to the project, but the guidelines regarding parking areas and driveways are relevant. The proposal largely meets these guidelines. And the site work related to the parking lots and driveways on the site will not impact historic features. The proposal adds a drop-off loop with parking spaces on Warwick Avenue in the front of the main entrance to Briscoe Academy, which adds a curb cut on the street and relocates another existing curb cut. The existence of the curb cut on Warwick Street, which served as a garage on the current addition, provides a historic precedent for a driveway in this location. The guidelines direct that parking areas be as unobtrusive as possible. However, the steep topography of this portion of the site makes that difficult because the parking can't be located behind or adjacent to the Briscoe Academy portion of the building. And in addition, there is a need for accessible parking adjacent to the entrance of Briscoe Academy. And so due to the topography of the site, the parking spaces and drop-off loop will be several feet higher than the grade of Warwick Avenue. And staff recommends approval of the design as proposed due to the topographical constrictions of this site and the necessity of accessible parking, and advises that the design team screen the parking with shrubs or walls to make it less visible. 5.2, archaeological resources. Staff has reviewed the proposal, has determined there's a low potential for intact archaeological deposits within the limited disturbance for this project. The property does not have a neighborhood architectural review committee because it's a landmark, but staff did inform the Historic Frederick Douglass High School Alumni Association, Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Committee, and the North Avenue Task Force. Staff believes this project largely meets the CHAP design guidelines for additions, new construction, and site work. While there are a few design details that don't fully meet the design guidelines, which staff recommends the design team refine the sizes and detailing of the window bays, dimensions of windows in the bays, and size of the bank spandrel panels on the facade of the Briscoe Academy addition. But staff has also determined that the drop-off loop with parking spaces on Warwick Avenue in front of the main entrance to Briscoe Academy doesn't fully comply with the guidelines, but staff recommends that the commission approve the design as proposed due to the topographical constrictions, the necessity of accessible parking, with the requirement that the design team screen the parking with shrubs and or walls. Whoops. And so staff recommends concept approval. With those conditions, subject to those conditions, and that final details be reviewed and approved by the full commission. Thank you, commissioners. Any questions for me?
Lauren, thank you.
Can you clarify on the proposed new entrance? You called it 2 stories, and on their kind of rendering, it calls it 2 stories. It looks to me, it's really, the usable space is a kind of double high.
Are you talking about the other
single
entrance?
floor.
This or the other?
Yeah, not this one, the other.
Student entrance.
Student entrance.
Student entrance,
yeah.
sorry. It's 1 story. The student entrance is 1 story.
Okay, that's what was a little confusing. Yeah,
So
that one.
it's 1 story.
Okay, that's what I thought, but it,
Oh, sorry. That was a copy editing error.
well, they list it too on one of the slides that was submitted to us as a 2-story, and so I was looking at the plans, I was like,
No,
where's
that's
the
1
second?
story. No, 1 story.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners? Garrett.
What is the Briscoe Academy?
I will let the representatives from city schools and or the design team respond to it. I understand that it is a city public school for special needs students.
Okay, Lauren, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we have two individuals who have signed up to testify. The first is from Baltimore City Schools, Fred D. Mason. Fred, are you here?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I'm obviously in support of this project to result in a fully renovated Douglas High School and a co-located Joseph Briscoe Academy, which is one of our separate public day schools serving special needs students in grades 6 through 12 that is currently located on Druid Hill Avenue and will move to this location once the project is complete.
Okay.
And, oh, I'm sorry.
Name one more time, for the record.
Yes, Fred Mason, M-A-S-O-N.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Mason? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we have Amy McCarty. And Amy, if I pronounced your last name wrong, forgive me. Okay. Feel free to put your name in the mic as well.
Hi, I'm Amy McCarty. I'm with Samaha Associates, the design team that's working on the Frederick Douglass project. So thank you, Lauren, for your presentation. Kind of incorporates what we're trying to do here, but we're really just looking at kind of the necessity of where we need additions on this building, you know, trying to preserve as much of the historic building as possible. We're adding the entrance for Frederick Douglass students to make that a secure vestibule and make it a secure entrance during the day throughout the school, as well as access to the school in the mornings. The addition for the stair replacement is literally just getting ADA access to that portion of the building. That existing wing of the building has like 5 different levels. So by adding the elevator over there, we can get ADA access to all of those portions of the building. And then the third addition, which is the larger addition for the Joseph Briscoe Academy, is really just trying to give them a presence on the site because the school is existing Frederick Douglass campus, really just trying to give the Joseph Briscoe Academy a presence on the site as well off of the Warwick Street. So Frederick Douglass essentially has the Gwynn Falls Parkway access and then Briscoe off of Warwick.
Thank you so much. For 1 second, because I know you're the architect. Yes, gotta ask my commissioners. Yes.
Lauren kind of mentioned it a little bit about how you're looking at the existing building and thinking about the design of the additions and how they kind of complement the historic building while being modern.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of what you guys looked at, how you're trying to complement the historic building with the contemporary design?
Yeah, so we really looked at that. The first piece we kind of looked at was the Frederick Douglass entrance and really how the scale of that side of the building is very vertical. So pulling some of that verticality into the addition and really kind of respecting the character of the building. The existing building obviously is red brick. We wanted to stay away from that to, you know, make it clear identity of what's the existing building, what's new, and literally taking some of the softer tones from the existing building and pulling that into the additions to really kind of make them stand out as something that's not part of the original building. We don't want to try to mimic the existing building. We want to really be kind of subservient to the existing building, but still have a clear identity that that's, you know, the main entrance to the new school. And then really kind of pulling the 3 additions together to make them kind of a cohesive piece, even though they're on 3 different parts of the building, but really trying to tie them together as one new element to the building, even though it's 3 separate additions.
Because both of y'all threw the hand at the same time.
No problem.
You're okay.
I defer to my colleague.
Thank you. Now, a quick question, more surrounded around the Briscoe piece. And I can ask you a little bit more, or maybe it's for Mr. Mason, I'm not sure, about the extent of the special needs as it relates to outdoor accommodations. I understand and know that you will do the access, but will there be a need to do outdoor play spaces or things. I don't know the level of the special needs, but we didn't talk a lot about the landscape aspect.
Joseph Briscoe Academy mostly serves students with behavioral and emotional special needs more so than physical, and they will, have a gym within the building and certainly access to the outdoor play spaces.
So will there be any need to develop any particular outdoor play spaces to meet any of those needs?
Not that it's dedicated solely to Briscoe. There's an outdoor learning space that is dedicated to solely to Briscoe.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to first compliment the design team and Baltimore City. This school for our community is in many ways a sacred space. And to see what you've done with the 21st century kind of directive to recreate our schools, it's a great thing that you have done. It really complements the significance of the historic significance of the school, and also looking forward, moving into the progressive kind of era of education that we need in the city. My mother was a graduate of Douglas High School, and at the time when she went, only Douglas and Dunbar were accepting students of color. And so her being valedictorian and all of the other things that this school has meant to our community is very important. And it is also indicative of a transformation that's going on now in that part of the city. It complements what's happening at Mondawmin Mall with the new facility that's going in there that once was Target. You go 2 blocks to the south, and you have North Avenue, where there is an entire renaissance taking place there. There's been an old lumber yard that's been acquired and now being turned into exciting food hall and entertainment space on North Avenue, as well as all of the physical development that's taking place on Coppin State University's campus. And so I just want to thank you for the care that you all took with this design, and look forward to seeing it come to fruition. I mean, it's going to be a great place for us in the community with all of the safety features and the open space. It's going to bring it really into the modern era and tie it into the historical significance. Thanks.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions?
My grandmother went to Old Douglas, and a cousin taught at this building, so
Right,
very
right,
much
right.
part of the history of the city.
Absolutely.
And you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the architect a question. Can we go to a picture of an elevation with the building in it? Like anyone, that's fine. So, I guess, you have this great historic drawing of the original building, and when you look at it, you really get a sense of the vertical proportions that drive the bay design of the existing building, and I'm just not feeling that in the addition at all. And you can see that in some of the less successful existing additions, again, it's that lack of response to the original proportion that's creating the dissonance. And so I was just curious if maybe you could convince me otherwise or explain to me what's driving it not to have that same real dominant vertical proportion.
So I think part of that is actually because we were trying to tie our 2 additions together. The proportions on the west side of the building, or the east side of the building, where the new addition for Frederick Douglass is, it's a larger bay, it's a larger scale with the auditorium and the gym on that side of the building. So I think we can definitely look at how this addition relates more to, the side of the building that it's facing.
Yeah, this one you get very much a sense that the proportions don't relate to the building that's behind it.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the other one, Were we there?
No, you know,
I have no idea. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I like, go back to, yeah. So, agreed that this is a very different case. And so I think, your strong connection can be materially, but, maybe your proportion should be driven more strongly off of what elevation it's adjacent to or coming from. And maybe I would get it if it was in a I don't, this is, there are images of this, maybe go backwards, one more,
So
the other direction.
Yeah.
It feels so, it's supposed to be welcoming from Madaman, but because of the strong vertical fins in the diagonal axis, I feel like it's really, I'm not getting it, but it's making it feel very closed off and highly fractured relative to the composition of the original building. And so again, I'm just not, I think there's some big ideas that are really clear, like you want to make a material palette that's kind of cohesive between the additions. And that is a good idea, and it should definitely be different than the existing building, but I'm never getting, when I look at it, I don't get a connection at all. And so typically that could be driven through like wall, window relationships or proportion or some kind of pattern language that ties them together that I'm not getting.
And I think to that point, part of that is that what we're actually relating the scale of those spacing of the windows is aligning with the existing doors that we're essentially wrapping. So we're sort of covering, to an extent, the part that we're aligning directly with. I don't know if you have that diagram. Yeah, I don't. So that top diagram, there's 3 doors in the existing facade there that are the student entrance, and we're aligning the new entrance with those doors. So the intent is that you would be able to go directly into that existing vestibule that's there.
Yeah, that's not reading at all, nor do I it feels like the tail wagging the dog, right? Because you've come out with an expression that's bigger and more generous in plan than what was there, but you're keeping it, maybe the program spaces on the other side are constraining it, I don't know, but I don't think when you look at that connection's a driver. I don't know.
Sir.
I'm seeing that the 2 additions relate to one another, but I'm struggling to see how either of them relate to the existing historic building. And part of that is, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Powell's comments about, I would have the same thought, was it with the fans staggered like that, when you go to Winds Falls to that side, you've closed off that facade, and I don't know that it does read as now this is the entrance moment that was the intention. I also think, when you're talking about like, this is the thickness of the space between the doors that are inside that we don't see anymore, but what the existing building does is that it's not just a solid void relationship on the facade, but everything is highly articulated. So you're breaking down those solid pieces in between the windows in a certain way on the elevations of the original building that just doesn't, it gets lost in a big rectangular concrete fin. And so it seems thick and kind of chunky. And I just should probably have started out by saying, I realize this is concept approval, right? So we're talking about massing and scale, but you've put architecture in front of us and materiality in front of us. And so as you continue to develop that for next time, I think it's good to have this discussion. I find it a little odd, I mean, that we're using brick, but we're not using red brick. And I understand that the thought was not to match the existing, but it really makes the additions to me seem other from the building, almost independent, and like it was something you could construct, and then after the fact, it's connected to the building behind me. And in terms of the architecture of, the original architecture, the era of the building, instead of reading to me as modern and contemporary, well, instead of reading to me as contemporary, the addition, like this one is reading as a contemporary version of mid-century modern. You know, it's got that that kind of Kennedy Center look to it. And so it really feels quite incongruous to me, the comparison of the new buildings with the older building.
Okay, Paul, you had your hand up.
I probably have a laundry list of things, but I just had a quick question. When it comes to this concept design, massing scale proportion as approval, you know, how is it being taken by our comments? Like, are they taken as, maybe this is a question for Lauren, or for Eric? Is it, if there's a list of things that we just say, hey, there's some recommendations to consider for the next round of design? I don't know if that should be a motion, but there's a lot of great thoughts here, and I'm going to add to it. But how is that usually dealt with? You know, can that just be taken as that if the architect and design team will look at that for the next round, and it sounds like it's coming back to us anyways for another iteration. How does that work?
I mean, you could ask him to come back, and I mean, it seems like you're giving pretty good direction of what you're looking for, and maybe we could summarize that at the end of the motion, and you could say, please come back with the following revisions, and here's some design direction.
Kathy.
So, just quickly to your point, which is, you know, the first hearing's height, scale, massing. So that's really what we need to make sure we focus on giving them direction for. I think everything else is just kind of extra thoughts, so they have things to consider for the next hearing, but technically those aren't the things we're really looking at for this one. So, looking at kind of height, scale, massing, my biggest issue is the proposed new entrance as well. Yeah, the diagonal one. Yeah. So, but one of my concerns is actually its interaction with the historic main entrance that's behind it. I don't think you have this slide in your presentation, Lauren, so don't try to find it. But we were given a kind of sketch rendering that is an aerial view that kind of shows this from the top. So it kind of shows how the roof is interacting with that building. And I'm trying to kind of figure out the decision about how tall to make that, because it seems, yeah, that's good. Because, you know, you've got taking the mic, okay. Because you've got kind of your historic parapet entrance here, then you've got the kind of step back part there, but then you kind of stuck this roof down here. And so is this an intentional height based on need, or kind of what was that decision? Because it seems a little awkward to introduce yet another height to this. And I think if you looked at either going vertical or true horizontal, and right now it's just kind of an in-between. So I was just kind of wondering what the thought process is there.
So originally we had the addition higher. The reason we lowered it to where it is now is so that it's under the sill of the windows for the auditorium and the infilled windows of the gym. So it's kind of putting that roof below that sill height, because if you raise it up, that one window on the end of the auditorium for sure, it's gonna interrupt that.
We'll go above it and then have it
Yeah.
inside of the lobby up high.
I think there are maybe some other possible explorations there. And that's where I'm just trying to get at kind of the massing of that entrance. And I think that could use a little bit more work. As far as the little stair elevator addition, you know, I think that is what it is. It's pretty functional. And then, you know, as far as the massing of the Briscoe School, Personally, I don't have an issue with the massing, and I do agree with some of the other comments to consider architecturally before you come back. But the massing and scale and kind of how that interacts with what the massing of the building is, I think that is done well, and the architectural expression and things can be worked on and figured out. But I definitely do have a concern about kind of how that mass reads at the main entrance. I do also appreciate all the landscape that you've put into this. That's not technically part of the height massing scale hearing, but I can see clearly, like Dr. Rowell was saying, you guys have put a lot of thought in how you're approaching the building, how the students are using the open area and things like that. And so I do appreciate the thought that's clearly put into that. And I think this has come a tremendous amount of effort, and now it's just kind of refining it to get the best version possible.
Isabel, go right ahead.
When it relates to massing, I think that's one thing that I think I have just a large concern about is in a lot of cases when we're doing additions, and particularly contemporary additions to a historic building, that there's a little bit more thoughtfulness to how it's attached to the building. I think in most cases, Lauren, if you don't mind, just scrolling through some of the additional masses, they seem to just attach like little tumors, like just, I don't know the best way to say it, but they're just slammed up against the building, I think a lot of cases that there's a time when there is like this a little bit more of a, just almost like a setback or a more visual kind of, separation between old and new. And I think that's one of the reasons why the materiality is that question, because if you're taking new brick and old brick and they're just sort of slamming together, it's not really being thoughtful to the historic building. So I think if you're really gonna say, hey, I wanna be thoughtful to the historic building, then you have to go all the way with it. So similar to the entry, the main entry is just really slammed against that building and really engulfing that historic entry. The historic entry is actually quite, splendid as a building detail, but it really is engulfed by it, and it doesn't really feel like it's being celebrated, at least exterior-wise, three-dimensionally, and that's probably, maybe inside you're gonna see it better, and that you'll have a thoughtfulness to that, but at least on the outside, we just kind of, it's almost like as bad as demoing parts of the building. It's just like now we're just kind of swallowing it, and it's kind of it's a little bit it's unfortunate, I guess, in that regard. So I think, again, I agree with Commissioner Good. I don't think we should be getting into too much of the details of everything. I think that's going to be your next challenge, but I think it is very important that these additions are trying to respect the existing building, and right now I think they're more, they're really just kind of like, in a very parasitical way, just attach these buildings. It's not really doing justice to the building. And I think I would actually vote to see another massing study and another, strategy on how these buildings actually attach to the building a bit more thoughtfully than it is now, before I even get into the architecture.
Okay.
I just had another thought, and take it with a grain of salt, which is you mentioned earlier about kind of bringing the kind of sizing and spacing of the the old entrance that's going to be surrounded by the new. And the looking at the proportion and the reading of that entrance, it doesn't have to be, it's certainly, it's a design intent, so, but it doesn't have to be an exact replication. It's more about the feeling and evoking the same kind of rhythm and style. So it doesn't have to be as heavy, because I know on the historic building, we've got kind of these kind of large, wide, pseudo Gothic buttress things going on, and I can see trying to kind of emulate that. But it doesn't have to exactly kind of replicate those dimensions. It's about proportional, how it feels, how it reads on its own. And then while I certainly respect the intention to try to get the 3 new additions to kind of tie together, I think you guys can accomplish that through materiality, and that a more responsive design will come from looking at it in its exact location. So I think you'll get that tie-in through your selection, and clearly the thoughts with kind of the renderings and materials that you've proposed, you are thinking about that. But design-wise, having them respond a bit more to their location on the building would help them be a little more successful.
Yes.
Should never get me to comment on design. The only thing I really would add is, and it's really going back to Commissioner Langmead about the color of the brick. In this case, because your additions are really proud of the original building, the color design is really going to be crucial. And the first thing that I see is kind of this gold color yellow that really competes with the school, the original building. So what I would urge you to do is not look at it as just today, but how does that live in 5 years or 10 years? And when you look at the built environment and you drive past and you can say, that was built then, that was built then, and that goes to Kapow's comments, is really kind of play test it from that lens. And I think in this case, the architecture and the massing, they are so integral just simply because of where the additions are, that this is the case where, you know, the eye can, that perspective and the tricks of the eye can really actually help you because you have very particular needs because of the population that you have. And I imagine some aspects of the floor plan, things you just cannot change. So if you can't change those things, then you have to trick the brain in a different way. So I would just kind of urge you to go back and think of it in, you know, 3 years. Am I going to drive down the street and say, "Woo, you know, look at this addition, and that's really bright," compared to what has stood the test of time? So that was my only comment there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren, could you take us back to our recommendation page? Commissioners, before we have a decision on the recommendations, would you all like to have further conversation on this topic? Peter.
I mean, I'll leave it to the professional architects in the group, but the yellow color first jumped out to me. I mean, we're doing enough with the design of this building to differentiate it from the old. We're not doing a Gothic revival addition to it. So I think sticking with a red brick that blends better with the original building would be good. To Ann's point about the verticality and trying to pull that over, I couldn't agree more with that. I have a harder time with the front. You know, I definitely see where Kapow's going with it. I would do worry about popping up and then running into the window. So I would be interested in some other way to do it. But again, Ann's point about that view from Winds Falls Parkway, it really is just totally shut off there. When I'm standing in front of it or the renderings there, yeah, maybe not so bad. But yeah, those would be the concerns I would have about it.
Peter, thank you. Anyone else? Catherine.
So I just want to make sure that we stay focused on the fact that it's a height scale masking hearing. And so we'll be revisiting architecture and details and things like that. And for me, the height scale massing of the Briscoe and the stair elevator addition are okay, but I'm not comfortable with the massing of the proposed new diagonal entrance yet. So that's where I stand. I don't know about my fellow commissioners. The proposed student entry.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm not directly to answer Commissioner Good's question, but I generally think that our decision here today should not dictate what materials they should be using. Rather, it should be written to say, consider an alternative to the tan brick and other
Understood.
aspects of what we've been shown today,
Yeah.
but not to dictate what they ought to do. Let them come up with another solution.
The word consider. Got that. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So, for Frederick Douglass High School, 2301 Gwynns Fall Parkway, the recommendation from staff recommends concept approval, condition on the requirements. The design team refine the sizes and detailing of the window bays, the dimensions of the windows and the bays and size of the blank spandrel panels on the facade of the Briscoe Academy addition to better relate to the Douglass High School building and design screening for the parking lot in front of the Briscoe Academy. Final details will be reviewed and approved by our full commission. That's a recommendation. And? Don't move. Not yet.
I just wanted to, I wonder if we have a little bit more discussion to have about this before
Do we?
voting.
Okay.
I really don't think we need more discussion. I think we can just vote that we do not agree with the decision to move on and it needs to come back at this level. Because of, specifically when you talk about sizes and detailing of window bays, we're just not there.
Okay. Do we have a
Fair enough.
consensus on that?
And I think we've said enough.
We have to
Yeah,
vote.
yeah.
we have
No,
to
no,
vote.
no, I know.
I just
don't
for
think we
that,
need
I
a
want to
very
make.
big motion other than the motion is to come
No,
back.
and what you just said, I wanted to make
making that
sure
motion.
if there was any conversation on what you said, is any conversation with that?
Just procedurally, I guess, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate.
Yes, sir.
But I'm assuming you're gonna ask for a motion. You should see if someone motions.
That's
I
right.
did, that was me.
So,
But,
sorry.
I mean, don't you motion, aren't you allowed, don't you need to motion on what's being?
On what's being
Can I
presented.
just clarify what is the motion? Is it disapprove concept approval and require that the team come back
Yes,
and address the concerns of the commission?
yes,
Okay,
that's it.
great.
Okay. Who would like to put that motion
No,
forward?
that was,
Ann Powell made that motion.
Yes, thank you, Ann Powell. Do I have a second?
mine.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstain? One abstain? Okay, the ayes have it. Commissioners, I was going to ask, do you want to take a break or move on to the next one? Let's move. Okay. 1404, 1406, 1408, Druid Hill Avenue, Upton, Marlbell Hill Historic District. The request, concept review, construction 3 new 3-story row houses. Application is Dean Harrison, Upton Renaissance LLC, and the staff is Mr. Tyreek.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will be moving fast, so feel free to ask questions at the end.
Microphone.
Oh, tell you, mic on, Tyreek. Thank you, sir.
All right, if I explain all of this. Good evening, everyone. All right. So this is a concept review to construct 3 3-story row home buildings at 1404, 1406, and 1408 Druid Hill Avenue. The site contains 3 grass-filled vacant lots on the west side of 1400, or the 1400 block of Druid Hill Avenue. West Lafayette Street is the cross street to the south, and Mosher Street is the cross street to the north. There is a 10-foot pedestrian alley to the rear. As seen in the 1890 Sanborn map, there were 3 3-story row houses that stood at 1404, 1408, and 1406, 1408 Druid Hill Avenue. It is unknown when these properties were demolished, but many properties have been demolished in Upton's Marble Hill through planned urban renewal and emergency demolition over the past 50 years up to present. For instance, 1402 Druid Hill Avenue, which is visible on most recent aerial imagery, was demolished on an emergency basis earlier this year. In the surrounding vicinity around the site, the neighborhood included home of the Friendless, St. Vincent's Infant Asylum, St. Peter's Church, Public School Number 6, Church of the Immaculate Conception and their respective schools, and the Madison Avenue M&E Church. This is the first application for these 3 properties for CHAP. The proposal is to construct 3 3-story, 37-foot-high residential row houses on the southwest side of Druid Hill Avenue. New row houses are proposed to be 3 stories with a 3rd-floor deck on the entire roof. On the Druid Hill Avenue facade, the row houses will be accessed by concrete steps with metal railings. On the rear elevation, the building will be accessed by a wooden stairwell and a deck. The building's main entrances will be northeast facing along Druid Hill Avenue. And here's a rendering as you can see here. Here is the site as you can see here. Here's a top view of the 3 parcels. Here's a view from the north, a view from the east, a view from the south, and a view from the west. All right. Staff used the following guidelines to make their assessment. Guidelines 2.1, guidelines principles for new design, 2.2 site design, 2.3 scale and form, 2.4 building features, and 2.5 materials and detailing. For 2.1, this proposal meets the guidelines. The proposed row houses are similar in material, form, massing, and architectural features of the surrounding historic buildings of the neighborhood. Contemporary design elements were added at the rear, and a new concrete masonry stoop clearly juxtaposes the new materials from the existing materials in the neighborhood. 2.2 site design. The proposal meets these guidelines. The proposal is set back from the rear alley to separate private space from public. The proposed materials complement the existing architectural character of the neighborhood. 2.3 scale and form. The proposal partially meets these guidelines. The proportions of solids to voids and rhythm of the new construction is responding to the existing historic buildings on Druid Hill Avenue. The front facade matches with the datums of the existing buildings. The proposal incorporates double-hung windows on the front facade, which draws design intent from the surrounding row houses, respectively. The proposal also includes new patio doors to act as windows to incorporate new contemporary designs into the proposal at the rear. There is no heavy cornice, which does not match the existing character of the neighborhood. The proposal includes a third floor doghouse that is not highly visible from the street. We've also used 2.41 building entrances and 2.45 roofs. For building entrances, the proposal partially meets these guidelines. The building's main entrance is located in a location similar to the existing historic structures in the neighborhood. However, the proposal includes a brick frame stoop with concrete treads, which does not match the historic character of the surrounding neighborhood. The front stoop is also rotated in such a way that does not match the historic character due to an existing planter. For 2.5 roofs, the proposal meets these guidelines. The surrounding roofs are generally flat and have a low pitch. The proposed new construction has a low pitch roof as well. While there is a proposed doghouse, which is an enclosed staircase to the roof, on each house, these doghouses and rooftops are not highly visible from Druid Hill Avenue and thus comply with the design guidelines. We've also used 2.51 doors and windows and 2.52 materials. For doors and windows, the proposal does not fully meet the guidelines. The windows and doors are compatible in scale and placement. The proposed windows at the front facade are vinyl and do not have Baltimore bullnose trim. And based on the renderings and plans, they project outward from the plane on the front facade. Instead of being inset in the facade, the windows on the historic row house buildings and neighboring properties are double-hung wood windows applied with Baltimore bullnose trim. The proposed windows at the rear are contemporary, which is compatible with the styles within the neighborhood. Also, there's a two-panel metal front door, while doors within the neighborhood are French doors with arched transom applied with the Baltimore bullnose trim, and the windows and the door on the facade are not compatible. In the meantime, staff has received updated materials for doors and windows. For materials, the proposal does meet the guidelines. The plans call for the buildings to be mostly masonry brick that replicates the historic red brick within the neighborhood. The dominant building material in the neighborhood is brick on a stone base. Here's the site plan for the site. So as you can see, the rear facade is set back from the 10-foot alley. Here is the front facade. So as you can see, the front stoops are rotated in a way. There is an existing historic planter that is intruding on a new main entranceway. So since one of the stairwells has to be rotated, all of them will be rotated for consistency. As you can see, the doghouses are seen here. The doors and windows will be changed. So here's the rear elevation. As you can see, there's contemporary materials. There's a patio door with two side lights and 4 transoms. There's a contemporary double hung windows at the second level, and there's another set of patio doors with side lights. And there's also a rooftop deck. These railings are not visible from the street. Here's a sightline study from across the street. Druid Hill Avenue is a very wide street with wide sidewalks, and the buildings are tall. So as you can see, the doghouse is placed in a location that it will not be visible at all from the street. Here is a rendering of the front facade. As you can see, 1402 has been demolished. That is outside. This is not part of that proposal. So as you can see, this is 1404, 1406, and 1408. The Marble Hill Improvement Association has been informed of this proposal. The association submitted written comments about the proposal. The comments are in support of the entire row house development with concerns of the final details. The design generally meets the design guidelines, except for some details such as proposed windows and doors on the front facade. Staff recommends concept approval of the design with final design details to return to staff. Staff further recommends that the applicant revise the proposed products for windows and doors on the facade to better comply with the design guidelines. Thank you, Commissioners.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Tariq? Yes, ma'am.
I have one question. I noticed that the front stoops are 2 different depths. Did you have any conversation with the applicant about why that is, or is
There is a gradual grade change along these 3 row homes. So
there are different depths though from the house?
I will pull up the site plan. This is true.
See, so the one on the top is deeper than the other 2?
This is true.
Is the will we be hearing from the architect?
Yes, you will.
All right, I'll ask them.
Any other questions for Tariq? Okay, Tariq, thank you.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Marty Marin from Marin Architects. I'm the architect. That was a stoop, the depth of the stoops, that was a mistake, and that's already been corrected. Okay. Also, we never intended the front windows to be vinyl. I don't know if it says vinyl, but they're all wood with Baltimore bullnose.
Okay. You said Baltimore what? Say that one more
Baltimore bullnose.
Bullnose.
What is their planar relationship to the brick?
The bullnose is flush with the brick.
Okay, it's just that, you can see the confusion as we're seeing
Yeah,
a shadow
absolutely.
line.
So we've updated this design, and we didn't get it in time for Tyreek's presentation.
This is correct.
Go right ahead.
Hi, mine is really just more about livability on the rear. Is there a reason why you're doing French doors, but then you just did these little wood stairs? Why didn't you provide a more useful deck that's even the width of the actual fenestration? And I guess even with that, I don't really know the depth of the rear yard. That just seems to be a little bit, it's not about the design necessarily, but usability and livability of whoever's gonna live there.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't intend those decks for recreation. This is the parking pad behind the building, and so we only made it the width of the doors themselves. But, I mean, I'd consider
What's
widening it.
The depth of the rear yard?
The
No, the depth of the rear yard.
I think it is, I don't have that number right off my, no. But I can get back to you.
This is the back, right?
That's the back.
And let's look at the front again.
Well, I know that.
Sir, you had a question? You had your hand up?
I'm ready. What is the difference in the floor level elevation between the uphill building and the downhill building?
There are 6 inches between each house.
No, okay, so it's
So it's a
12
full-
inches total?
It's 12 inches, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, we've, probably because in our office, we've had a few projects lately where owners bought adjacent existing old buildings and wanted us to tie them together. I just wonder whether the floor levels couldn't be coordinated between these buildings. Obviously, it would result in a taller stoop for the downhill building, but it might be in the long-term flexibility of the whole structure.
Well, we did originally have two of the houses at the same floor elevation, and it did affect the stoops, and the stoops originally were vertical out to the street, and so they were different depths, so we changed it to match the grade. And we're not planning for combining the buildings.
And for the far future, right? But we can, anyway.
Sure.
So also looking at this, and this may be something you've already corrected, but the appearance of the bottom of how the bottom of the front door interacts with the stair is different between the three. Is that the intention, to have different conditions, or are they all going to be treated the same way? And because, you know, two of them read with like the black door coming all the way down, is the door level with the stoop versus the one on the right has a step up?
The intention is for them all to be the same,
Okay, and so which way?
with a step at the door.
So basically like looking like the right-hand door? Where there's,
Right.
okay.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Yes, doctor.
Could you say a little bit about the ability to get furniture into the units, into the houses, given the fact that there is a railing in front of each door in terms of angling the furniture?
So we have a French door at the rear of the houses. And an open plan. So I would assume the furniture would come in through the rear.
And come in through the back. Okay.
That also has a limited railing. I don't know that that's really under our purview.
Yeah.
But something to think about. But yeah, I don't think that's really something.
Oh, okay.
He might be thinking about buying one of them.
Yeah. Well, actually, my grandfather lives right across the street, so yeah, I might.
Sure.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to give a comment? Kip-Out.
Hey, Marty, how are you? Maybe just a recommendation, I'm sure you're probably gonna look at it, just the base material of the stair, and maybe how and incorporation with the stair material and the base of the building itself. I don't know, there's, like if you look at, just right there. So just wondering if there's any articulation or material change, just to consider that.
Talking about the brick, concrete.
Right, the brick, concrete, then, kind of brick face of the facade, maybe just, just in that region of that zone, is to just consider the articulation and materiality. That's all. I have no suggestion for it. I know you'll look at it, but I just wanted to just make a point of that. I was just noting that I'm not sure the rendering right now shows what you really want to do, that's all. So, that's it.
Is there anyone else? Okay. Thank you. We have just one person that wanted to testify. Marion Blackwell, are you here?
Good evening.
Good evening. Afternoon. Yeah.
Afternoon. The Historic Barber Hill Community Association had worked with Dean Harrison on this project for, I think it's been over a 2-year period. As information sent to Tyreek some months ago, we did discuss this project, and our main concern was that it blended into the rhythm in terms of scale and color of the material used for the rest of the block. Because that particular block has different rhythms. At Karen, it has so many different front surfaces that continuity is something that we wanted to maintain in the block. We have another project that's going on by Black Women's Build, who we are also monitoring in terms of consistency for the block and make sure that it remains much of the historic character of the community. So all in all, we approved, the Marbury Community Association And there are some things that I think that could be riveted, but I think it can be done at the staff level with CHAP. Thank you.
And Ms. Blackwell, before you sit down, we want to thank you. It's our understanding that you were a former commissioner, so it's good to have your presence here as
Oh,
well.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Tyreek, if you can get us back to the recommendation, please. Thank you. Commissioners, before we put anything on the floor, is there any further conversation? Okay, 1404, 1406, 1408 Druid Hill Avenue. Concept review, CHAP staff recommends concept approval of the design with found design details to return to the staff. Staff further recommends that the applicant revise the proposed products for the windows and the door on the facade to better comply with design guidelines. Who would like to put that forth?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, next on our list, 2218 East Pratt Street, Butchers Hill Historic District, request construct curb cut and driveway. The applicant is James T. Hayes. Please forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong. Staff presenting Eddie Leon. Where's that at? We'll wait for Eddie for a second. It's all good. It's all good.
Owner, Todd Heiss. I am the staff member. The property is located in the Butchers Hill neighborhood. It is located along East Pratt Street. It is also at the corner at, I believe it's Madeira Street. The site has been reviewed by the CHAP Commission, has not been reviewed by a CHAP Commission on any major project. It has been reviewed by staff on smaller items over the course of the years. The building is part of the CHAP Historic District from the time of designation. However, due to a recently discovered database error, the owner applied for and received a building permit to raise the side addition, install a curb cut, and create a driveway earlier this summer. Permit records show that some previous permits issued were forwarded to CHAP staff in the building permit system. Once CHAP discovered that the building permit was issued without an authorization to proceed, CHAP staff requested that HCD revoke the permit and had the database error corrected. This is a brief synopsis of records going back to 2007, showing that indeed the property was referred to CHAP and CHAP staff for review for most of its existence. However, at some point, from somewhere around 2014 until earlier this year, it was not in the database and tagged to CHAP for anything. So that is what we found and discovered, which we had then corrected. The property here shown in this aerial view, the far left is a 5-bay wide, 3-story tall, Italianate styled house. And you'll note that there is a 1-story white frame addition. This addition was unfortunately torn down because of the database error, which allowed the permit for demolishing it to go forward. The applicant is requesting permission to continue to install a curb cut, convert the side yard into a driveway. The driveway will connect parking spaces located behind his property at 134 South Patterson Park, a property also owned by this applicant. Staff applied chapters 4.1.1 streetscapes, 4.2.3 streets, alleys and parking, 4.2.5 sidewalks and walkways, the CHAP Historic Preservation Guidelines. A historic map from 1914 shows the structure at the bottom left at 2218, the one-story addition. The yard space between that and an existing garage structure that was built during the time of significance to the neighborhood of Butchers Hill. Right above, you'll note there's an open yard space between the dwelling and the rear of 134 South Patterson Park Avenue. Here is the current condition of the proposed driveway. The plans call for the removal of that granite curb cut and putting in a driveway apron and driveway through there to access the backyard of the property to the north. This is how the property did look before the demolition of the historic one-story structure, which was demoed basically by accident because of the database record being incorrect. These are the plans as proposed by the applicant. And this is the current conditions of the driveway space and side yard. The applicant will be working with us to correct the side elevation where the addition was incorrectly demolished. The Neighborhood Association of Butchers Hill does not support the construction of the driveway and curb cut because it violates the CHAP guidelines. The CHAP staff believes the proposed driveway and curb cut and removal of the historic granite curb cut does not meet several sections of the CHAP guidelines. The new driveway and curb cut will detract from the historic character of the streetscape. The proposed driveway and curb cut does not meet CHAP guidelines 4.1.1, 4.2.3, and 4.2.5. CHAP staff recommends disapprove curb cut and driveway. Thank you.
Eddie, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Eddie? Yes, sir.
Just a quick question, was the addition contributing, historic, or?
Yes, the addition that was there was a contributing piece to the building. As I said, a database error that did not show that the property was a CHAP property. You know, the mea culpa of the database. The applicants have received, and I have uploaded and shared with you about roughly 10 letters of support for the project. There are about, I think, close to 30 letters of opposition to the project in the Wix site, including that of the next door neighbor whose garage is affected by the removal of the side yard. Yes, Commissioner.
I'm really confused about the lot lines, so could you just explain? I mean, I can't really understand if we can go back to.
I'll go back to the
that
historic one.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2218 is this corner building here. The one-story addition that was removed is here. This is a yard. And this garage building is part of this property here. The owner, Mr. Heiss, owns this property here that goes straight back. He wishes to pave this area, which is outside the CHAP district, and use a driveway to access it here.
Does he also own 2218?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like a little L.
Correct.
And so he's going to give himself an easement into the spot between the two buildings on 134.
134.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Would you please go back to the referenced CHAP guidelines that the curb cut does not follow? I know you had them up earlier.
Mm-hmm. So chapters 4.1.1, streetscapes, 4.2.3, streets, alleys, parkings, and 4.2.5, sidewalks and walkways. Each section covers talks about the removal of historic material, such as in this case, the granite.
The granite curb.
Granite curb, also streetscape, and also the prohibition of putting in new driveways.
So this is an access driveway that is coming off of a more more Main Street than the adjacent streets, right? Like those are the secondary streets, and this is the primary street.
Well, South Patterson Park is a
Oh, that's
major one,
Patterson Park, okay.
and so is Pratt. I think it's Madeira back here that is the secondary street, and there is no access to that back property area.
Okay,
That he
thank you.
wishes to put in a driveway, which is outside the CHAP district. This is outside the CHAP district. But in order to access it, you have to go through the CHAP district.
Gotcha. Tomorrow.
I just random question on the easement, and maybe it's for you or the applicant, but have the applicant started the process of doing a legal access
You'll have to
easement?
ask the applicant. He is here to speak. He did provide a testimony, which is uploaded to the website as well, concerning his proposal.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Eddie? Tomorrow, I'll wait because I see you going through your screen. You good? Okay, good. Eddie, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have the applicant, is Mr. James Hines here? James, did I pronounce your last name right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, but for the record, put it in the mic.
James Heiss, I'm the owner of 2218 East Pratt Street and 134 South Patterson Park Avenue. So the mapping error was sort of a issue that caught me off guard. So I'm playing a little catch up with the project and the permits now. So.
Commissioners, do you all have any questions for the applicant?
Well, same question I asked Mr. Land. Had you started the legal process of doing an access easement across the?
I have not, no. Executive Director Holcomb was going to check and see if an easement was necessary to advance the project.
Okay.
Hasn't gotten back to me yet. It's something I can research, and it's easy enough to prepare and record an easement.
Okay, but it has not, you have not started that?
No,
process.
not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. Did you already apply for the curb cut or went to zoning for that yet?
I have not, I did initially because of the error with the mapping error with the district. I had a permit from DHCD to do the work, and I also had a permit from the Department of Transportation. So those permits had been issued, they were posted on the property, and then when the mapping error came to light is when I was issued the stop work order.
But you were approved the curb cut?
Yes, through DOT and DHCD.
Yeah, I'm just asking a question. You've got an approved permit from DOT to do the curb cut?
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, okay.
James, I was going to ask you real quick. This right here, what's this? It's a street. What's that?
That's a carriage house? Oh, that's a,
This.
that's like a Sally Port. That's on the neighbor's property.
Okay, so that's not an alley, little street or nothing?
No.
Okay.
No.
Oh, I was
That's
just
like a
asking. Okay.
private walkway.
Okay. Catherine.
You mentioned in your testimony that there has been some flooding that you feel is a result of the delay of completion. Can you describe what those issues are? Are you getting flooding in the yard, or is it that it's coming in the house? The reason why I'm asking that is because looking at the photos with the grade change, that's likely to impact how water moves into both your property and the adjacent garage, and how that will be mitigated if this ground level where it's been moved to at this point is kept, how those issues will be mitigated.
So the plan was not to keep it at that ground level. This was after 70 tons of material had been removed from the two sites. The plan was to slope 134 South Patterson Park towards the back right corner of the house where there's a Sally Port, and to pitch this driveway so that the water flows down onto East Pratt Street into the gutter there.
Okay, so the grading was in process when it was stopped. It wasn't to its finished grade yet.
Correct. We were, I think, 2 days into like a 5 to 7 day project, and that's when the stop work order was issued. It said driveway parking pad, no permit, but I did have the two
Understood.
permits.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, James, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, can I add one thing?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so I did see that I violated, or the the plan seems to violate certain of the guidelines, but I'm willing to work with either the neighborhood association or the commission to make adjustments to the plan. I know that granite curb would have to be removed, something that we could relocate and incorporate into the curb cut or the driveway apron or the driveway. So that's it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
On our list, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people who would like to testify. Just a reminder, 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 30 seconds is the warning. And after that, we'll go to the next person. The first person is Virgil Bartram. I don't want to say the last name wrong. How you? Bartram. Bartram. Thank you, Bartram. When you get a chance, say your whole name.
Good afternoon, Virgil Bartram. With the Butchers Hill Land Use Committee, I've actually been a liaison person for Butchers Hill to CHAP since 1987. And so I'm on the ATP there list. And I've lived in Butchers Hill over 40 years. And I'd like to start very quickly to go through. I had dogs and walked dogs to the park past this property. I live on the 2000 block of East Pratt Street, and so I'm 2 blocks away. I walk to the park by it. And I can remember in the 1980s when the city had the entire Pratt Street through our 3 blocks of Pratt Street were torn up. And there, lo and behold, were the trolley tracks from way back that had been completely paved over, and they started pouring up the granite curbs. And they literally, I remember walking my dog by it, they were literally pouring up the pieces of granite we're talking about here at 2218 East Pratt Street. And the then owner immediately got on it and complained and said, hey, this is a federal historic district, this is a CHAP district, and we got it stopped. So we saved these granite curbs one time, and it'd be great to only right, it seems like, to save them again. So I wanted to say that, and I also wanted to say that in my 40 years in Butchers Hill, I've been passing out the Butchers Hill newsletter for 40 years, since 1982. Whoops. And I'd like to, I don't know if I can pass these around. I'm referencing.
You can pass it around. Yeah, we'll take it and pass it around.
I have 3 copies, if that helps. I'm going to drop everything. Oh, thanks. On page 2, it says Land Use Committee, CHAP blocks in Butchers Hill. This land use reminds property owners in the 2100 and 2200 blocks of Baltimore Street and the 2200 block of East Pratt Street that you live in a city historic district. All planned exterior work, including painting, must be submitted to CHAP, and gives a reference to who to contact. I've been helping distribute these letters on Pratt Street, and we put out 1,000 of these newsletters every month with the CHAP notice on it. I delivered to Pratt Street, I delivered 100 a month. We've had this notice in the newsletter since 2008 approximately. And so I just wanted to point that out. This has always been a problem. I was once on a coalition of historic neighborhoods where we were looking for ways to get the notification out. You live in a CHAP district. So from there, very quickly.
Roger, I got to stop you soon because you went over 3.
Okay.
If you have something you want to pass out, we'll gladly take it. If you have something else you want to pass out.
Yes, this is just basically what we don't want, and it's not in the CHAP district. This is a paved backyard for parking in the 2100 block of East Pratt Street. And it shows how austere it is. And I think that just concerned that taking away the fence and the like of that would be something similar to that. I'm just using that as an example, we're not judging now.
Virgil, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we have Dan. Dan, I don't want to pronounce your last name wrong.
That's okay.
All right. Casella. Dan, come right on up and.
So,
And Dan, please, for your put your full name.
Sure. Dan Koselleck. I'm the current president of the Butchers Hill Association. I'm going to leave my mask on. My weight count's a little low from cancer treatment, if you don't mind. If
Not
you
at all.
can't hear me, I'll just get closer. First, most of the people in this room that are here from the neighborhood are proximate to this property, and they take great pride in their properties and their historic houses. And they actually were aware of this prior to the association actually being aware of what's done, and they brought it to our attention. And so we're here to amplify their concerns and assure that the processes are followed completely. But what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is I'd like to yield the balance of my time to Virgil so he can continue.
That's fine. Virgil, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Wasn't quite expecting that. So I wanted to again refer to the photograph that's going around. That is Mr. Heiss's property in the 2100 block of East Pratt Street, but that's a parking spot off of an alley. And the difference between having a driveway and parking spots off of Pratt Street are a big difference. And you can see how austere from these photographs that it is now. We have that exposed as part of the streetscape view. I think that's basically where I was going.
You got 1 minute left. You can say whatever you like.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Next on our list, we have a David Phobos.
Yes, Phoebus.
Phoebus, forgive me.
Thank you.
David, you put say your full name on the mic.
Yes, sir. David Phoebus. I'm at 200 South Chester, which is right the corner, a block and a half down. I was one of the people who noticed this going on. I've been in the neighborhood for 44 years, and we've had a lot of CHAP compliance in 44 years. And we've had a lot of CHAP compliance in the 2200 block of East Pratt Street. I dare say the houses on both sides of 2218 have been heavily compliant. I'm sure it affected their bank accounts mightily. And across the street have been very compliant. Many of the houses across the street have gone through the CHAP process. So this consistency in a historic neighborhood is really, really important. The second thing is the changes that you can see up here where you've got an opening, which, by the way, most of us, I don't know how I got the permit for a curb cut driveway. They're very difficult to come by no matter where you are. That, as you can see, is in the middle of that block between Patterson Park and Madeira. It's sort of it's a tough entrance into a very busy street, which includes bus traffic, unfortunately, truck traffic. We'd like to say not, but it is. Lots of cars. I mean, Pratt Street is a serious conduit. And to come out is pretty dangerous sometimes. The other thing is this removal of a CHAP structure, the architectural removal, it's not just the curb cut, which you've already heard spoken of, so I won't do that again. But it's a way to create parking in the backyard of a house on 134, which Mr. Heiss very fortunately owns. But as you can see, this is not parking that's creating a parking garage right next to 2218. This is an easement, as you've all picked up on, that goes back. And instead of a yard being in 134 for 155 feet, it goes into a parking lot in a historic district. So I really would caution moving in that direction. I think my other points have already been mentioned by Virgil, and I'll yield the balance of my time. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Next on our list, we have James. James, I'm not going to try to mess up your last name. You're not coming up? Okay, gotcha. Next on our list is Jawando. Jawando, you here? Okay. Next on our list is Emmanuel Asa. Ansa, forgive me. And for the record, please give us your full name on the mic.
My name is Emmanuel Ansah. I'm a structural engineer representing Okoro Development.
Say again.
I'm here for.
Oh, your name was on our list. I apologize. You had your name on this list for here, so we'll talk to you in a little bit.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have Noel Brown.
I have to sit down.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can sit down.
Okay.
Yeah, you were on our other agenda item, but your name was on this agenda item to testify. So you just wrote on the wrong list. You're fine. Come on. Yeah, you're welcome.
My name's Noel Brown, and we live in the house at 2214 East Pratt Street, which is the next house down from 2218 going south on East Pratt Street. I just wanted to add a couple of things that haven't been mentioned. And when we live in 2214 and bought it in 1998 and then did extensive renovations with the full help and compliance of CHAP and our architect, Virgil, who has just finished talking. The one thing I want to add to this is that opening in this easement just opens up a whole can of worms of other problems. And the one that I want to talk about that hasn't been mentioned is that in front of that easement that he wants to create a driveway, to the very left is a very old maple tree that is about 60 feet tall. And if you see the leaves, there it is. And if you cross Madeira Street, you see the corner of Madeira Street is to your left there. There's another 3 maple trees that match that. I tried to get hold of the arborist to look at this tree, and I have not gotten a response yet. But when that curb cut is removed, it removes more than half of the root system of that old tree that gives so much character to the neighborhood, helps cool the neighborhood, and from a streetscape standpoint, it adds an amazing beauty with the other trees on that block. And the city's approach is that we'll call us when the tree dies and we'll cut it down and put a new one. And that tree has stood there probably at least 50 years. And the assault on that tree and its root system to make that curb cut would probably kill it. So I would hope that CHAPS would look at this as part of the whole picture of preserving the history of our and beauty of our neighborhood, and how this one thing now that's so much on people's mind is to keep the city green and provide a way to contribute to the environment. So I would strongly suggest that they really look into this matter of damaging this tree when this curb cut is made. And the others have already been mentioned. When we come out of Madeira Street to Pratt Street, now, the bus stop is at the corner of Pratt Street and Patterson Park Avenue. Cars are already waiting all the way going south, which is to the left there, of cars backed up through sometimes 2 lights changes because of the short distance. So this is midway. So this just complicates.
I don't want to hit you with the gavel though, but you went over your time, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
All right, gotcha.
Appreciate
Gotcha.
it.
You're welcome. Oh, Beth, come on. Yes, ma'am.
So I know all of you have been waiting to hear from me because I
Make sure
was
you give your full
announced
name.
earlier, but I'm Beth Braun. I am the former president of Butchers Hill, and I know that this is going long, so let me be very quick and say that the property that Mr. Heiss has on Patterson Park Avenue, we had some disagreements about the zoning for that. And he well knew the contact information for many people in the neighborhood, including our streetscape committee and our presidents. And if there was any question about whether this was a CHAP district or not, maybe it's not his responsibility to reach out, but he certainly could have. And knowing that he was going to do something pretty big on this street, he certainly could have reached out to have a conversation with us beforehand, and we would have certainly been happy to let him know that it was in a CHAP district. The other thing I just want to say is I just learned today that the picture there, the second one on the wall that you all look at, that picture was taken in the back of the house, but directly across the street from this, just as a little point of reference. We're from Butchers Hill. We really believe in our history, and we want to promote it as long as we can. Thank you.
Beth, thank you. Terry, can you take us to the recommendation page? So that concludes our public testimony. Oh, Eddie. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. Eddie's supposed to do it. Thank you, Eddie. So, commissioners, we have the recommendation. Before we put anything on the floor, is there any discussion we want to have amongst one another? Okay. Peter,
I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Who was the second? Was that?
Commissioners, do we need to take a break or keep going? Okay, but need a break.
Next one.
5.
Next one's easy.
Yeah.
The next one's easy.
I don't know.
We'll keep going. We'll keep going.
The next one's easy.
So here we go.
No, he's on first.
Next on our list, we have 11 through 13. North Carlton Street, Union Square Historic District request demolition hearing 1, determination of architectural significance. DHCD is the applicant and the staff is Tyreek.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Tyreek today. Lauren Chiswick, and I'm standing in for Tyreek for his next 2 items. These 2 properties are located in the unit block of North Carlton Street in Union Square. And they are the last 2 surviving alley houses on this block, as you can see here. And I'm just gonna go through a few of these aerial shots, sort of showing the context, or rather lack of context, for these survivors. So these 2 alley houses are very narrow, 2 small alley houses, 2 stories tall, and they currently are in states of significant deterioration. A little bit of the history here. You can see where they were located in the 1890 Sanborn map here. They used to be on an intact block. They were built somewhere between 1845 and 1860. Around 2020, these houses were identified for demolition through Project CORE, creating opportunities for renewal and enterprise. And the proposal to demolish them was made after extensive outreach to the community and several meetings with city planners and preservationists. The Project CORE initiative is a partnership between the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland. And these properties were chosen for demolition through Project CORE because of their severely deteriorated state, the loss of much of the historic fabric of the houses, as well as the lack of integrity on the block. The proposed demolition has been reviewed by the Maryland Historical Trust, MHT, and is part of a programmatic agreement between Baltimore City Department of Housing, Community Development, and MHT. So the proposal is to demolish the buildings. And I'm just going to go through and show the existing photos. So application of the guidelines, we applied section 3.6 demolition procedures of the Baltimore City Historic Preservation Rules and Regulations, specifically demolition hearing 1, determination of architectural significance, wherein we need to make a determination regarding the significance of the structures and see if they are eligible for demolition if they do not retain architectural significance. This is a 1975 photograph of the 3 through 13 North Carlton Street. We were in the Phoebe Stanton boardroom. This was a study led by Dr. Phoebe Stanton, the Poppleton Historic Study. And the two buildings are the furthest on the left in this block. So this was a condition in 1975. They were built circa 1845 to 1860, built as two-story houses, 2 bays wide, 2 rooms deep. And in 1975, they were determined to be in poor condition. And we are now 50 years later. Application of the design guidelines. What we do is we apply the criteria for designating districts and landmarks. And based on the architecture of these buildings and the history of their buildings and their historic context, staff has determined that they do not meet any of the criteria for designation. While this development was part of the basic historic pattern of Union Square, there are other alley streets in the neighborhood that are still extant. Since the surrounding historic buildings have already been demolished, these structures no longer have a historic context. Eric Holcomb likes to use the phrase, of buildings that have lost their block, and that's what happened here. No known person that significantly shaped Baltimore's history is associated with the buildings, and the buildings are not a work of a master and do not embody high artistic values. They've also lost a lot of their architectural significance through deterioration, as we can see here. I'm just going to show some of these photos. We're just sort of walking around the building. The property is in the Union Square Historic District. Staff informed the Union Square ARC and did not receive any comments. Staff has reviewed the architecture and history of the buildings, determined that the structures do not meet any of the criteria for designation and thus are eligible for demolition under Demo Hearing 1. And staff recommends that they do not contribute to the historic district and may be demolished. Thank you, Commissioners. Any questions?
Lauren, thank you. Do we have any questions for Lauren? Okay. For 1 through 113, we do not have anyone who would like to testify. So I would like to bring this as a conversation to you all before we make the recommendation. Does anyone have any comments?
I'll just say really quickly, I know it should read Union Square Historic District, but
Councilman, thank you.
that's only small.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll make that correction. Garrett.
Lauren, I have a question for you.
Okay.
How is the property titled? Are the alley houses part and parcel of the front parcel, or do they have a separate title on the land titles?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Lauren, The applicants, DHCD, are they here?
No.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, just making sure.
No.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, commissioners, go, yes, sir.
DHCD owns those structures now. And they're planning on demolishing them as soon as possible. No, just the.
Buildings.
Just the buildings, so the lot that's on the buildings.
Commissioners, the recommendation, if there are no other comments, staff recommends a determination that the buildings do not contribute to the historic district of Federal Hill and may be demolished. Does anyone want to put that forward?
Can we put forward the recommendation, accept the staff recommendation for the District of Union?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah. Sarah, thank you for that. Who would like to put that on the floor?
I'll move to accept staff recommendation with that correction to the
Okay.
neighborhood.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain?
1,
2.
We have 2 abstain. Any opposed? Gotcha. The ayes have it. Gotcha. Next on our list, 901. What's wrong? Oh, I thought you said something. I'm sorry, it's okay. 901 South Hanover Street and 21 West Henrietta Street, Federal Hill Historic District, request demolition hearing 1, determination of architectural significance. Javon Farrell and Kevin Stovall are the applicant, and the staff will be Lauren.
The staff is Tyreek and Lauren is presenting.
I didn't want to mix it up.
So be nice, because I'm just gonna be flying blind here. No, I know I know the content. I just don't know the order of the presentation, so we'll learn it together. So the site conditions, the properties are located in Federal Hill at the intersection of South Hanover Street and East Henrietta Street. As you can see here, this is a closer view of the 2 properties. So one of them, I mean, they both front on Henrietta, but one of them has the address. The one to the left has the address of 901 South Hanover, and then the linear one is North Henrietta Street. So these properties are the conditions that you can see here. 901 South Hanover Street is largely covered with a surface parking lot and a modern garage building, auto garage building. You can see that there is a 2-story section, an older historic 2-story section of buildings sort of popping up through that garage that is extant. 21 West Henrietta was built in 1917 as a 3-story warehouse and 5-story office building for the formerly adjacent meatpacking business. So you can see just a few more aerial photos. So again, just a little bit more context, the 901 South Hanover Street is largely a surface parking lot with a modern garage. And then you can see with 21 West Henrietta Street, the front portion, I'm going to call it the 5-story front portion, is a really handsome commercial structure that's Italianate in design. And then it has a more sort of industrial 3-story rear warehouse portion, all of the windows of which have been infilled and enclosed. You can see in 1890, the buildings that are there now were not there in 1890. These were all residences. And you can see, it's a little hard to see, but abutting the pork packing plant, the Creole pork packing plant, 1901 to 1902, Sanborn. 1914, 1915, you can see that the Creole pork packing plant has sort of marching down the block, taking up more property. And then this 1914 to 1951 map shows the conditions of 21 West Henrietta pretty well. Sorry, I'm trying to get it's not working. But you can see where it shows the office building and then the long building. And it shows a tire building on the 901 South Hanover Street that's no longer extant. This is a first CHAP application for both properties, and the proposal is to demolish the buildings on the parcel 901 South Hanover and the 3-story portions of the building at 21 West Henrietta Street. The 5-story tall portion at 21 West Henrietta Street will be retained. So the parts marked in red will be demolished. Again, CHAP staff applies section 3.6 demolition procedures, specifically demolition hearing 1, determination of architectural significance, where the staff will present the historical and architectural significance of the property, history of structures on the property, including approximate dates of additions and significant alterations, a determination of the historical and or architectural significance of the structures, additions, significant alterations, or ancillary buildings, and application of criteria for designation to the structure in question. So the history of significance, 21 West Henrietta Street is a 5-story Italianate brick building with a 3-story brick warehouse, built as the offices of the Charles G. Creel Pork Packing Company, which is located at 5 to 23 West Henrietta Street. The company was established in Baltimore in 1810 and was run by generations of the Creel family. The family established its slaughterhouse and meatpacking plant in the unit block of Henrietta Street in the mid-1800s. And interestingly, members of multiple generations of the family lived adjacent to their business on Henrietta Street. In the early 20th century, this was a significant pork packing company in Baltimore and even on the East Coast. So, and when essentially, they purchased the houses that were on this property in 1917 and constructed this very, stately office building with warehouse behind. The rest of their meatpacking complex is gone, demolished years ago, and so this is really the sole surviving structure to represent that long storied business that was a really important business in this part of the city. The adjacent property at 901 South Hanover Street, it doesn't really have any historic significance. It has a portion of a building that was part of the warehouse structure, but otherwise, there's nothing on the lot that is historically significant. So as staff, we apply the determination of architectural significance by determining whether or not the building contributes to the local historic district or continues to meet the standards for designation as a local landmark. So we consider the 4 criteria for significance: association with events, associations with important people, architectural significance or archaeological significance, or 3 and 4. And in reviewing the proposal, which is to demolish the rear 3-story portions of 21 West Henrietta and the non-historic modern garage building, staff finds that the demolition of these proposed structures, these are not significant and are not architecturally significant or historically significant. The staff informed the Federal Hill Architectural Review Committee and received a favorable response from the community for this proposal. Staff has reviewed the architecture and history of the buildings and determined that the portions of the building proposed for demolition do not meet the criteria for designation and are thus eligible for demolition under Demolition Hearing 1. And staff recommends a determination that the rear L of 21 West Henrietta Street and the building at 901 South Hanover Street do not contribute to the historic district of Federal Hill and may be demolished. Thank you, commissioners. Any questions?
Laura, thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Yes.
So the 3-story portion of the building was part of the meat packing plant.
It was.
So is the determination, I know you're not Tyreek, so maybe you can answer this question.
Sure.
I guess I don't understand why the rear portion isn't significant. I know that the front portion is the more kind of stately office,
Mhm.
but if it was also part of the same company
Mhm.
and built basically the same time or
Mhm.
close after,
Mhm.
why is that portion not considered significant? I get the contemporary garage piece, but I'm just
Right.
wondering about that three-story piece.
I mean, I think it's due in part to just its eroded character. I mean, you know, all of the it did have window openings. They've all been infilled. You know, it's incredibly, you know, it doesn't really even have a functional elevation on this side. Where's the rear elevation? The rear elevation, you know, it's again, the openings are infilled or are in, you know, poor condition. It's just, you know, it doesn't really convey its historic significance.
Okay. Well, thank you. Are there any other questions for Laura? Okay. We have on our list to testify, we have the applicant, Javon Farrell. Are you here? Oh, come right on up. Forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong, full name.
How's it going? My name is Javon Farrell. I mean, Lauren pretty much covered it all. In speaking to the current owner of the property, because we don't own it yet, we're negotiating papers on that. But in speaking to them, the back part of the warehouse, to your point, it's being used, right? It's not being used. It's being used as a storage for the Firestone. And we don't believe that's the best and highest use for that property. And you know, our plan is to help revitalize Federal Hill and put something there that makes people proud of it, as opposed to use it as storage for auto mechanic repair shop. So, thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We already had the recommendation page. Before we put anything on the floor, are there any conversation we'd like to have?
So I just want to bring up our larger context of if we determine that it is not contributing, then that would mean that the demolition would be approved. Is that correct, Eric? If we determine that it's not contributing?
Yes, that is correct. If they determine that there is no historic significance in that portion of that
Was
property,
it-
then it will be eligible to be demolished, and we would write an authorization to proceed, and they would demolish it.
Was it figured out at all after our last meeting with the question about if we needed to include any specific language about the demolition not being permitted to start until there's a approved new proposed?
By all means.
Yeah, so in terms of the demolition, that wouldn't start for maybe middle of '25. The Firestone is still under lease, and we're not gonna terminate their lease. So that wouldn't start until the rest of the redevelopment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But point of process, Eric, because we have
Yeah,
previously discussed about the timing of demolition not being able to proceed until
Yeah, the guidelines already, the procedures already have for, if we allow permission for if in a demo one hearing and we say it's non-contributing, it's a non-historic building, and we're gonna issue a demolition permit whenever. That's sort of what we have done now. If it's a demolition two hearing and we determine in a demo one that that structure is historic, then we would not allow that demolition to occur until we approve the new construction guidelines. If you would want to put a caveat on this right here that said that, you know, we don't want demolition of these buildings until, or if the demolition of these buildings occur, we want to make sure that what's left, a five-story structure, is going to be stabilized and well maintained, that's fine.
Yeah, I
Th-
think
That's what it seems like is mandated, that we would say we approve the staff recommendation with the condition that the portions of the building to remain, which are contributing, be adequately protected in the interim.
Gotcha. Do we have anyone else had a comment on that? Go ahead, Clayton.
But then that still allows them to demo and then brace the building and who knows what, right? Is that
Would,
that
right, that
suggestion?
wouldn't speak to the timing.
Would it, I mean, I get the idea that if demo one is approved, it's typically for like the entire site could be raised, but in this particular case, there's a portion. So I think it has to go to if it was a demo two, that they wouldn't be able to demo until,
Well, that's why I was asking about that caveat, because I know we have that on when we end up going to demolition too, but if we decide today that those portions of the building are not contributing, then it ends with this hearing. There's not a second hearing. So I guess I would say that in addition to Commissioner Langby's suggestion, that we also add on that the demolition cannot proceed until there's a proposed or approved replacement.
But is that-
Whatever
yeah.
the same language is for our
But what if someone
demo
wants to demolish a structure and not necessarily replace it with anything?
That's what I'm.
Is
That's
that
what
relevant?
We're trying
I mean,
to
do we need to
avoid.
know that?
I think that's what we're trying to avoid.
And Peter, you
But
want to say something
it
too,
could
Peter?
be okay. I mean, there could be situations in which you don't have to rebuild anything. You're just saying, I would like to take this down.
And excuse me one second, Commissioner. Javon, the only reason I told you to step back is when we're in session talking, you only can be recognized if one of the commissioners want to ask you a question. When we're in closed session, it's just us. Just
Commissioner
wanted to
Morrell
know.
has a.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna follow up on Catherine's point. I mean, I don't know that I'm totally convinced that the back of it doesn't contribute. I mean, the windows are infilled, but, I mean, I haven't been on site to see it in person, but it looks like the brick's too thin, that it's built all in one period. I don't know why the back of the building wouldn't all of a sudden not contribute. Clearly the modern Firestone stuff, and where it returns at a slightly lower level on the back, I would agree that that doesn't contribute. But as far as that 901 South Hanover, I think that all looks like one contributing piece to me, even if it's got some stucco and paint and infilled window openings in it.
Anyone else?
So I just wanted to be clear what I was trying to say, which is I'm not saying broadly apply the same caveat to demo one as we do for demo two about not permitting, but from the applicant's brief comment, they are intending to put something new there eventually. So it wouldn't be the case that it's just wanting to be left open. Therefore, it is probably a good idea to put on there that we need to approve a new design, because we don't want it just sitting there as a vacant lot or an empty parking lot for years and years until the development happens, especially if something happens between now and then, which we've
So-
seen happen frequently.
I guess we could say approve staff recommendation with the condition that no demolition occurs until new plans are approved, or plans for new construction are approved.
And the new construction could potentially only include refinishing the wall at the back of the building.
something.
That they
It's
took it
gonna
off
have to
and then
get
leaving.
something.
I'm just trying to think about the precedent that we're setting, so yeah. Yeah. That
Are
could
you,
work.
going back to Commissioner Moore, are you adding additional language about the rear property, or you're just making a comment?
I generally disagree with the staff recommendation that it doesn't contribute. I think it's part of a contributing building. I agree that the Firestone one and that other later addition that is slightly lower on the rear does not, but that 3-story section I think does.
Yeah, I mean, I am concerned about the 3-story section, but that said, if there is a valid, approved new plan that is cohesive with the site and compatible with the taller office portion of the building, I would be comfortable with that, but that's also why I was kind of thinking about the kind of caveat about it not just being able to be demolished, because if for some reason this plan falls through,
And somebody else wants to
and
keep that
somebody else
part,
wants to keep that part,
that would be
right?
valid,
That
yeah.
would be valid. It would be a different proposal, especially since it is a contract purchaser. and not the owner applicant. That's my thought process.
So what's your motion?
I don't know if other people agree with me.
Well, put it out there and let's find out.
I move to agree with staff's recommendation with the addition that the demolition is not permitted until an approved new proposal, new construction is approved through, how does the language read for demolition? Is it through CHAP or through Baltimore City permits? Do you remember?
Would it be
It's
approved,
whatever you
would it
want.
be approved, or would it be reviewed?
Approved.
Approved, okay, gotcha.
You could say new construction plans review are approved by CHAP, or I think that's good enough. Or if you want to say are approved by permits, I mean, until they have
I
a
would say
building permit.
CHAP.
But,
I would say approved by
Okay.
CHAP.
so what I have here is move staff recommendation with the condition that demolition not to occur until new construction plans are approved by CHAP.
Yes, so moved.
All right,
Is there a second?
do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Any abstain?
Yeah, roll call.
We gotta do a roll call.
Roll
You
call.
guys have to vote something.
Well, you all moving
Yeah,
fast.
you want to take a roll call?
Councilman
Yeah, he's
Bullock.
doing it right now. Yep. Bullock's not here.
I mean, I don't understand why everybody thinks it's not historic.
That's what I'm saying.
Catherine, good. We got a motion on the table.
Yeah, I moved, so.
Yeah, I know. Commissioner Langmead,
Aye.
Commissioner Leon.
Aye.
Commissioner Mendeleev. Commissioner Merrow.
No.
Commissioner Powell.
Aye.
Commissioner Power.
No.
Commissioner Rodwell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Woods.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 approved, 2 against. We could,
what?
no, go ahead. I'm done.
Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you. All right. Next on our list, 142 through 144 West Fayette Street and 102, 104, 106 North Liberty Street, 5 and Dime Historic District, request demolition hearing 1, determination of architectural significance, applicant Episcopal Housing Corporation. Staff, Caitlin.
One second, sorry. I did get confirmation our firm is working on this project, so I could recuse myself.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks for telling us. Appreciate that.
I thought this was the last one. We have one more to go. So
Yeah, well, they're
we'll
both-
come get you.
Yeah, well, they're both 5 and dime, so I know.
Oh,
we're-
so you're gonna.
So
roll
both
out.
of them you have to, okay. We still have a quorum, right? We still have a quorum, right? Good seeing you, Marianne.
I used to work on those jobs, but I've been in all these.
Good afternoon,
Good
Commission.
afternoon.
I am Caitlin Audette. I'm here today to present to you the demo hearing 1 application for 102, 104, and 106 North Liberty Street, and 142 and 144 West Fayette Street. Situated within the historic retail core of Baltimore City and on a street grid that largely remains intact from the original settlement of the area, the 5 and Dime Historic District demonstrates distinctive characteristics of 19th and early 20th century commercial architecture in a variety of styles. 5 and Dime comprises about 5 city blocks northwest of the Inner Harbor and immediately west of the Central Business District. Howard Street continues to serve this area as the primary thoroughfare for public transit as the light rail tracks replace the historic streetcar route. So here's an aerial showing the site as well, and all the properties in question outlined for your review. We've got some aerial perspectives so you can see those elevations and the roofs a little better. and from the south. The east view is not available because the buildings are too tall in the other direction. Some background, this is just the recent background, but in April of 2018, the Five and Dime and the Howard Street Commercial Local Historic Districts were designated and signed by the mayor. Around last year, the properties were included in a request for proposal offered by BDC. This was one of several over the past decade that were completed by BDC for these properties. And just last month, CHAP staff met with the applicant to discuss the project and the demolition review process. The proposal is a little unique in that the applicant proposes demolition of some or all of the buildings at 102, 104, and 106 North Liberty Street and 142 and 144 West Fayette Street. So they are at the initial phase of this. They will be getting a structural report that we can review as part of the demo hearing too. So this is kind of just to get this out of the way, to be honest. We're starting this first so we can have a better understanding of if they are significant or not, and then move on to the other questions at hand. So the application design guidelines, you all are well familiar with this by this time in the hearing. Staff applied section 3.6 demolition procedures of the Baltimore City Historic Preservation Rules and Regulations, specifically demolition hearing 1 determination of architectural significance. The first step in the demolition review process is what we're doing now, a public hearing to determine if the buildings contribute to the local historic district or continue to meet standards for designation as a local landmark. And this happens prior to considering details of the demolition or hardship. So moving on to the historic and architectural significance. So the buildings under review today are located at the southeast corner of the Five and Dime Historic District and represent some of the earliest construction within the district. Here you can see the area as shown in the 1869 E. Saxton Company bird's eye view of the city of Baltimore. The buildings represent the diversity of styles and materials that make this district architecturally significant, and the buildings retain significant architectural details that convey their style and period of construction. And here is the 1890 Sanborn map. There is one quirk just to share with you. So if you look at the 1869 bird's eye view, there are more bays facing Fayette than there should be. So I'm not sure if that was just artist error or if there was some differences there. Yeah, so here you can see the 1890 Sanborn map, which shows what we are familiar with today, right? And what is the same between 1869 and 1890 are the row houses along Liberty. So that is 104 and 106. 102 was demolished, and we'll get into that in a minute. So here's 102 North Liberty. It's the most modern building within this group, built in the early 20th century. The distinctive building was completed in a simplistic Gothic revival style. This was previously the location for a row house similar to those found at 104 and 106 North Liberty. Sanborn maps showed that the building was used as a restaurant, supporting the larger retail district. Today, the 3-story building is vacant with the first floor storefront covered by plywood. The buildings at 104 and 106 North Liberty are some of the earliest buildings in the district, dating to the mid-19th century. The 3.5-story federal-style buildings were likely purpose-built with ground floor commercial with residential above, a typical arrangement used as the city continued to expand, although the height of the building is a little unusual. Typically, they were 2.5, not 3.5 stories. The Sanborn maps show that the buildings were part of a row of similar properties, again, as does the bird's eye view, and the two parcels were consolidated early in their history and together housed both restaurants and stores at the ground floor at various times. The building at 142 West Fayette Street is a corner building. It's also an early building within the district, though, again, like I said, the ESAXE 1869 bird's eye view of Baltimore shows the incorrect number of bays. And so it may post-date that. The simple vernacular building is typical of the mid-19th century and was built as ground-level commercial. Early Sanborn maps show the continued use as a paint and oil store. The commercial use was maintained throughout its history. And the building at 144 West Fayette Street also likely dates to the mid to late 19th century, though again, there's an issue with the bird's eye view. This Italianate building retains its ornate cornice and unique form stretching along the east side of Park Avenue. Sandware maps show that the ground floor was often divided into several storefronts, which were the only known use. The Market Center CDC, Baltimore Development Corporation, and Downtown Partnership of Baltimore were informed of the proposal. Staff has received one email of support for the demolition and one email in opposition, and there are members of several of those organizations here today who I'm sure will speak. So staff finds that the buildings meet criteria 3 of the Commission's criteria for designating districts and landmark and possess physical integrity. Therefore, staff recommends disapproval of the proposal to demolish these buildings. Any questions?
Caitlin, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Caitlin? Okay, Caitlin, thank you. On our list, we have just 2 people who'd like to testify. John Hopkins.
Can I let the applicant go first?
Oh, I apologize. Forgive me. Applicant, come on up and give your full name for the record. Thank you, John. Turn your mic on.
Yep.
And start over so we can pick it up on the, yeah.
My name is Dan McCarthy from Episcopal Housing Corporation, and I apologize as the applicant. I didn't realize I had to sign in to testify.
It's okay.
So we're kind of new to the historic, this process of working with CHAP. And I know we're at a demolition 1 hearing, but I think it doesn't really kind of reflect what our intent is. We've consulted and been really helped by CHAP staff, and we've consulted with the Five and Dime ARC and Baltimore Heritage. Our intention is to get in there, as we said, with our structural engineer to investigate these properties. They've been long vacant. We kind of got a little ways into them when we were putting in our application with the Baltimore Development Corporation, but I will say they're fairly deteriorated. Ultimately, this is a joint venture between Episcopal Housing Corporation and Healthcare for the Homeless. Our intent is to build a multifamily building on this site. I don't need to tell you guys that there's lots of development activity here in this district, and our intent is to do a combination of permanent supportive housing, affordable units, and market rate units, which we think, considering all the construction in the neighborhood, is going to be a welcome kind of diversity to this community. Episcopal Housing Corporation was involved in the 410 Lofts, which is not too far from here, which has a similar kind of permanent supportive housing, affordable, and market rate. This is really the first step in the process. We felt we needed to establish this historic significance. We have a contract with a structural engineer. We'll get in there with them once we get our ENP signed with development, exclusive negotiating privilege with BDC. And then we'll consult with our Mosley architects who we're working with and Southway Builders to go through the process of evaluating the buildings. And then we'll come back and discuss the level of historic fabric that remains and evaluate the front facades on it. So, I think we'll look forward to seeing you guys at a future conversation. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So can you clarify you're saying you're going in with a structural engineer to evaluate the structural viability of the project. You're also going through demo hearing 1, so I'm a little confused.
Well, I think this was to determine that this was these buildings contributed to the fabric of the Five and Dime. We felt, and maybe I've got it wrong, that we had to come in for this demo 1 hearing, and then we would go in and make our determination on the buildings. Caitlin,
And this was our staff recommendation. So based off of how the commission has reviewed demo 1 hearings in the past, we've asked that the structural conversation be pushed to a demo 2 hearing. So they're not even sure yet, how it's going to plan out, but they know there will need to be some demolition here. So This first step is just kind of get this out of the way. Are they historic or not? So that we can move on to the bigger conversation of what needs to be demolished, how is it going to be demolished, and how much fabric can be retained if possible.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Yes.
I guess to follow up on that, also confusion, and Caitlin, because if my understanding of how our process works is it really only needs to be a demolition hearing if an entire structure is proposed. So
I
if some,
would disagree with that since the last item just came forward.
So that's one of the problems with the guidelines.
so yeah, I think that's something that we need to straighten out, because I think that's been fuzzy with other past applications as well, that we've been involved in, as far as how much of a building has to be demolished for it to go to a demo hearing. So,
Caitlin, just to be clear, this is just about historical significance. Am I correct?
That's exactly.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Do you know what architects you're working with yet?
Mostly architects.
Okay. Want to make sure we didn't have a conflict here.
Okay. Kipau, you had a question? Oh, I saw you move your mic. I'm sorry. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. Now we have two for public comment. John.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage. And I'll be brief, but I do want to say that we 100% support Episcopal Housing's mission to include affordable housing as part of the conversion of downtown to more residential. So we are 100% supportive of that. We don't know what their plans are. I'm not sure they know what their plans are for the site. And we are committed to trying to help them make this site work for them and keep the historic buildings that are there. I want to put that out there first. The easier question is there enough of these buildings left to still be historic to this district? And the answer is absolutely. Caitlin got it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nicole King? She had to leave? Okay, thank you. Commissioners, before we go with this, we review the staff recommendation, do we have any other conversation that we'd like to have amongst one another?
I mean, I personally think this is the character defining feature of the Five and Dime. And I know that, I know at least two of these buildings are in very savable condition. I've been to the top.
yeah, I mean,
They're definitely, there's character, that's it.
I think that's pretty obvious, and I just want to say again, which I said last month, I'm very concerned about how many demolition hearings we are hearing in the Five and Dime district, just in general over the past several months, and we know that a lot of these buildings in the district are challenged. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to try to help the district or anything like that. But I'm definitely concerned about how many demo hearings we're hearing, and I think we're probably going to continue to hear because the challenges of development in this area. So I just want to put that out there for people to put thoughts to at some point.
Thank you, Catherine. Anyone else for discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. Forgive me. Go ahead.
I was just going to move on staff's recommendation.
By all means. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you. So we have, next on our hearing, we have 114 West Lexington Street. Is the applicant here? Oh, you guys are the applicant? Oh, on behalf of the applicant? Okay, gotcha. All right. 114 West Lexington Street and 207-209 Park Avenue, Five and Dime Historic District. Request demolition hearing 2, determination of substantial hardship. Applicant Chooks Okoro and staff Eric Holcomb.
We saw this last month, so we'll just go really quickly in here. We know where it is. There it is right there. We're looking at 2 buildings instead of 3. Last time we looked at 3. There it is on the top right where it says site. Looking at it from a bird's eye view, we see where those two are located. Big arrows point to where the buildings are. Again, the big arrows are pointing to the buildings that we're looking at. And then just to take a quick pause here, this is 114 West Lexington Street, a wonderful early turn of the 20th century structure that has lots and lots of its architectural character left. And this is a 207, 209 Park Avenue. Same thing, early 20th century structure that has some very nice architectural details on the exterior. So we're coming back because the applicant is requesting partial demolition for 114 West Lexington Street, and they provided more information for 207, 209 Park Avenue. And that more information was submitted to us by the structural engineer who was here today that can speak to what he submitted. So the background, pretty much that what we did last time, except for August 8th, we approved 116, 120 West Lexington Street for full demolition and disapproved demolition for 207, 09 Park Avenue and 114 West Lexington Street. So we know what the proposal is. Application of design guidelines. In our staff report, we went through all of our procedures for the design guidelines. I think we probably know them by heart now. But these are the 3 points that we have to determine, and these are based in our ordinance. Demolition will be without substantial detriment to the public welfare, and demolition will be without substantial derogation from the intents and purposes of the CHAP ordinance, and the denial of the permit will result in substantial hardship to the applicant. So look at it really quickly. We've seen the 1914-51 Sanborn maps. Again, another picture of it. I think this is pretty incredible. This is historic right here, but this is the building. And look how huge the signs are. I don't think any Historic Preservation Commission in the country would approve of a sign like that today. Right. And again, just looking at this one right here, we're going to concentrate on 207, 209. So the existing conditions, this is what we'll start with 114 West Lexington Street. The front facade, I think, has lots of great character in it. I think this area right here, once you take that off, that's probably where you had the big canopy that was attached. So I don't know how much architectural detail is behind that. But this isn't the rear facade of the structure. There's a brick wall, and then there's space, and then there's the rear of the structure. And looking at the inside, you know, and Commissioner Powell was with us too, so I might lean on you a wee bit about that. But we went in, and she actually went upstairs, and I stayed downstairs with Commissioner Dennis. But it seems to be in structurally sound condition. I wasn't concerned I was going to fall through the floor. I'll put it that way. So, and it's concrete and steel, so you're really not falling through. But I also wanted to say, so that is sort of the to the back of some of those buildings. That is the access to get to the back of the building. Very, very tight to get in there. And this is sort of the access directly north of 207, 209, and that's the building again. So really looking on the inside, and these are the important photographs here. That's a hole in the roof right there that we saw. And we see that all of the second, third, and fourth floors have totally collapsed. And even the first floor underneath that hole has collapsed too. When I took that picture, I kind of leaned over. I tried to act like my wife who does yoga and sort of stretched out there and took the picture. This is the inside of the structure too. That is the east elevation and the south elevation. showing part of it that being part of the ceiling and second floor collapse. And this is the north wall again, and we'll talk about the north wall real quickly in a minute. And this is just showing that the vacant building notice has been on this building for many years. So we did a value of the land. We looked at this last time. 114 is listed as 237,167, and 207,209 at 80,000. This is really where it is. We looked at the numbers yet last time. These are the same sort of the same numbers here, and they're showing a negative rate of return of -7% and -6%. And I think one of the folks that are here for the applicant is also a numbers person too, so we could ask more questions about the numbers of this. So we have the structural engineer and the numbers guy, is that correct? Yes. Yes, great. So beyond the financial hardship, the applicant has also provided other challenges, providing 2 means of egress for each building if retained. So the engineer's report, we've all read that, but one of the things that we discovered was the significant hole in the roof. We got that documented, the connection of the building on 2 sides. The other thing is, the structural engineer is saying if you tear down 116 to 120 West Lexington Street, this building's going to fall down. So this building has to be, if we're going to preserve it, it has to be stabilized before that. And one of the things is you really can't stabilize it from the outside. You can't put your bracing on the exterior of the building because you can't block the egress of the buildings north to it. So the stabilization, the bracing needs to be on the inside. And that is something that's feasible, but it's going to directly increase the costs dramatically. So we could talk a little bit more about that. But that -7 rate of return is going to significantly increase if they need to do interior stabilization. So we had neighborhood comments here. BDC and Downtown Partnership support this project. Market Center CDD supports the project. We have 2 letters of support from nearby realtors. Senator Antonio Hayes and City Council President support this project. We know that Dr. King, Nicole King, does not support this project. And hopefully Director Hopkins will be up here for Baltimore Heritage to tell you his position. So just a quick analysis, 207 are contributing structures to the local historic district. 114 is contributing structure. The Lexington streetscape is intact. The buildings are in a significant state of deterioration. We know that, we've seen that. And rehabilitation of the properties would result in a negative rate of return of -6 for 20709 and -7% for 114 West Lexington Street. That's for full demolition of 114 West Lexington Street, according to the applicant. So really, the look at it is the 207, 209, we'll go back. 207, 209 is in such a significant state of deterioration that there's no way of really making any reasonable rate of return on that structure. Because of its state, its condition, interior condition, it is very, well, we could look at it real quickly. Because of its really interior and significant state of deterioration, I believe that the staff believes that demolition will be without substantial detriment to the public welfare. And in fact, it may be a detriment right now in its current condition. And I believe that the demolition will be without substantial derogation from the intents and purposes of the CHAP ordinance, and that's because of its current condition. And we know that a denial of a demolition permit would result in a substantial hardship, either for this applicant or future applicants. what we do recommend documentation as best as we can. We do recommend the approval of the demolition of the rear of 114 West Lexington Street. And that is more so is that part of the building is not contributing historically to the streetscape. It is sort of hemmed in on the right and the left and those are party walls. I know it's a full historic structure, but most likely there will be savings, cost savings, and that -7% for the full rehab will change with that. And with a partial demolition, they will be able to incorporate 114th West Lexington Street into a larger construction, a larger building out there. So this is a point where staff believes that the incorporation of part of 114th West Lexington Street into a larger development project is the way to go to make this happen, to preserve the West Lexington streetscape. Any questions?
Any questions for Eric? Eric, thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, the applicants, which one would you like us to have go up first? Sure, go right in. And give your full name for the record.
Okay. Again, my name is Emmanuel Ansah. I'm a structural engineer working for the owner of this project. And I think the last speaker said it all, really. The building is very old, especially at 207. A lot of the floors have collapsed. And because of that, usually the floor is what breaks the wall. So when the floors are gone, the wall is overstressed. It's a lot of flexural stress is going through the wall right now. And at any time, really, the wall can crumble because it's losing the bracing system, which is the floor that's supposed to brace it. And I believe this project is supposed to be a mixed-use facility, retail space in the first floor level, and a couple of stories. I think it's a 6-story structure that is being proposed. Well, with that kind of loads imposed, we have to really replace the whole foundation in the building. We have to put a new foundation walls around in the building, because what's there now doesn't meet code. Doesn't meet ACI code, ACI 318 code. It doesn't meet IBC code. So because the building has been exposed to the weather for so long, the walls are really not in good shape to save. And like he was saying before, you cannot brace it from the outside, so you have to brace it from the inside. And it'll be a very dangerous task to try and brace it from the inside, being that the floors are collapsing. So it will be very dangerous. So it's a difficult thing to try and brace it from the inside. And I've done projects in the past that we have to preserve the facade for historic purpose, and usually we brace it from the outside. And usually in those buildings that I worked on in the past, the floors are always intact. So, but in this situation, the building is not in a very good shape. The walls are very much stressed that it can collapse at any time. And it's very dangerous for the workers that will be in there trying to install any kind of bracing. So that's my comment.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the architect? Thank you.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just want to recount what your claim is, that you cannot brace 207 from the inside.
Yes, very, very difficult.
Even though it has 2 layers of brick walls, because the theater was surrounded it. And so basically the walls are already being braced by the former theater because those exterior walls remain. And you can see the scars on that wall from where the floors were gone for where the theater used to be. So it's completely stabilized by the existing theater walls that were, the floors were demolished, but the walls are still there, and it's stabilized by 116 Lexington.
Which is gonna be demolished, by the way.
But that's a phasing situation. The 207 predates 116 based on the exterior window that you can see when you stand in 207 looking at 116. So as long as you put the new floor in before you tear down 116, you've figured that out, right? Then you can totally get 207 stabilized without harming it.
Well, it's gonna be also difficult to bring in the crane and
I don't know why you need a crane.
and the steel.
You don't need steel. You could do commercial construction with wood framing.
Well, this is a multi-story building, a 6-story building, so you can't use.
You're not not if you don't tear down 207.
Well, bracing 207 will be very difficult because the 207, a lot of the floors have collapsed.
I know, so has 600 North Howard Street. So did the Lane Bryant building down at 104 West Lexington. I was in all those buildings. None of them had roofs. They all looked like this before they had new construction and new floors put in them.
Okay. Well, like I said, bracing it would be very difficult. Bracing it from the inside would be very difficult and very.
It's already braced, right? I mean, that's what I don't understand. It's already braced by the building that was torn down around it. So, okay, and then what is the justification for tearing down the interior of 114? Is that also on the table?
Yes, because we're gonna have a retail space in the first floor, which has to be open. So, and then we have 6 floors of residential space.
Well, it's a 3-story building right now, right?
Right.
And you're telling, and it's steel and concrete floors.
Yeah, which is very old and doesn't meet code.
I don't understand that.
Well, this building was built like 100 years ago.
So was the one I live in.
It doesn't meet code today. And when you have today very major renovation today, you have to make it.
I work in historic buildings daily, and they all can be all of the ones that I've encountered can be retrofitted. I just want to be brought up to code. So I can't understand why existing concrete, which was typically over-engineered, is under capacity for the proposed uses and justify tearing it down.
Well, the old building does not meet code. It doesn't have the kind of rebar sizes, the steel sizes in the concrete.
How do you know that?
That is required.
Have you done a steel survey?
Well, I've done a lot of renovation, like you said. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've done a lot of renovations of buildings in the past, and usually the old buildings, the rebars, the steel in the concrete does not meet current code.
Yeah, it looked good to me. I mean, I didn't see spalling concrete. I saw decorative plaster on the bottom of poured-in-place concrete.
It might look good, but when we do some engineering calculations, it's not going to work.
I regret that our structural engineers already left the room, but okay, that was my question. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Catherine?
So in your letter report that we received, I do see extensive documentation on 207, 209, but I don't see the 114. And so just to kind of, I guess, reiterate Ann's question is, can you give us the reason why a partial demolition of 114 is proposed? Because I don't see any documentation that was submitted to us, unless I'm missing something, commissioners, about 114 being structurally questionable.
Yes, we had submitted a report on 114.
Okay, maybe it just didn't get translated or something like that, because Eric, do you remember if you received one on 114?
At the August hearing, we reviewed the structural report that talked about 114.
Oh, okay, so the previous one, there's not a new or updated. Okay. So I've, like Anne, have worked in many of these structures, several in and around this area, and in fact have looked at a couple directly across the street that have similar construction. So I'm somewhat of the same mind as Anne, is that opportunities can be found about how to deal with it. However, it's a hardship hearing, and all of those do take extra funding and effort. And so I've certainly been in and involved in worse buildings, in worse condition, and we've still found ways to save them. So I don't see the structural integrity as being necessarily a barrier, because I think there are ways that you can work with that. But that said, I guess I should stop. Do we have other people that we need to hear? I'm going to stop now. Sorry. No.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions for the architect? Okay. Thank you, structural engineer. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. I know you want to come up and speak. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Germano Gomez. I'm Vice President and Director of Real Estate for Harbor Bank of Maryland Community Development Corporation. Just here to express our support, our financial support, not only for the project, but also the developer and the community. We are headquartered at 25 West Fayette, very close proximity to the project. So not only are we a member of the business community, but we are also looking to make significant investment in West Baltimore. And in doing that, with Okuru Development, we are looking to support, a feasible project that reflects the highest, hopefully, and best use of the site, but still reflect the historic context. So we just came to express our full support of the redevelopment project as it is proposed.
Thank you so much. We only have one person who'd like to testify, Johns Hopkins.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage. We respectfully but strongly disagree with the staff's recommendation. I believe last time we had a hearing on this same proposal, I suggested that in order to demolish historic buildings in a CHAP district, applicants should be held to the very highest standard. There should be an engineering study. There should be an economic study on feasibility to determine hardship. Here we have heard that there is certainly some difficulty engineering-wise, but I don't think we have heard to that highest standard that it meets your hardship requirements. We have heard the number 7%, negative 7% return. I will suggest that the highest standard to determine hardship and feasibility came with the Rochambeau apartment demolition. Littman, Frizzell, and Mitchell hired an economic real estate consultant. They evaluated different scenarios, keeping part of the building, keeping all of the building, what different uses bring different returns, market rate rental, affordable rental, mixed use rental. We have 7%, but we don't know what went into that 7%. Did that take into consideration different paths forward, possibly keeping some but not all of the buildings, having market rate versus commercial versus mixed use versus single tenant, multiple tenants? We don't know. That's the highest standard. I don't believe, and Baltimore Heritage does not believe, that this applicant has come anywhere close to convincing an argument convincing economic or hardship in general. It is clear that the applicant's vision for this parcel in his mind, does not include the historic buildings being there, but that is not the litmus test that your standards set out. Your standards set out, has the applicant proven those 3 hardship points to the highest standard, and we submit that he has not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, commissioners. We have our recommendations, but before we make a decision, I'll open the floor for conversation. Any comments?
I did go through these buildings, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to talk about them.
I kind of feel like I got your opinions in the earlier questioning. I would be interested, Mr. Chairman, in the gentleman, sorry, I forgot your name, but it looked like he had something else to add, and I wasn't sure if it just looked like it, and so I was wondering what else you might
Catherine,
have
that's
to
your wish.
say.
By all means, come up.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. I just wanted to, I was unsure whether or not the financials that have been submitted to the commission were going to be reviewed here or if this was strictly a demolition hearing. But I can speak on behalf of the financial feasibility of the increased construction costs. This is what we do. This is our business. I've been in development over 20 years, teach a development course at Harbor Bank of Maryland. So this is something that we have studied to a great extent. And in order, which you all know, in order to attract capital to a project, and we're talking about anywhere from an $8 to $10 million investment in this project, in order to attract capital, there has to be some financial feasibility to it. So I believe that sources and uses were submitted for redeveloping the properties individually. And I can just say that after reviewing those, the architect's recommendations, the general contractor's estimates, and our experience and assumptions about income, about interest rates, and about return, we were not at all interested in financing the individual rehab. We don't see that the cost is going to be far greater than the value, just simply put. And I wouldn't be able to finance that. The larger project does allow for the density that's needed to cover the cost of, demolition plus bringing all 3 of those buildings together, as well as the scale. I think one of the other applicants mentioned the scale of the other projects that are being built in the 5 and dime. So I just wanted to express that in response that that financial feasibility has been extensively studied by us, the general contractor, and the developer, and that was presented.
I have one question. So basically what you're saying, your financing would cover demo and build. Your financing would not cover rehabilitation of the buildings as they currently stand.
Well, we talked about maintaining the facade at 114 based on. I mean, we'll follow the commission's recommendations, but talked about maintaining that. But as far as financing, but the whole idea is tying all 3 properties together. That's what really makes it financially feasible. The scale of each individual building, we don't see.
So give it to me straight. You guys will or you won't?
We won't. We will.
Because I'm looking here and it says that your hard costs. Well, are we supposed to get in that? We can't get into that. God can't give them. So I won't do that.
Okay.
But I just want to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, pal. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, did you have another? I just want to say my piece, and then I'm sort of ready to vote. But I think a few things, and these might be random thoughts, but I think what we're seeing, right, and it's not going to be consistent with every developer. But I don't think this developer had any intention to save any building at the beginning of this process. I think the whole intention was always a big building, and I think, and unfortunately, I've said it before. the way that this was parceled out, sparsed out, was always going to lead down this road that. That's it. I mean, the story was written at the beginning of the process, in my opinion. I hope. I mean, I think the previous applicant has a hopefully an intention to investigate to see options, but this one clearly was not. It was always going to be that the only way to make this work for them was to demo the building. I don't think there's a question in my mind, in anybody's mind, that anything can be possible. You can save these buildings, obviously. Even in portions of these buildings, you can save these buildings. It will cost more money, and that makes sense. And for a developer, it doesn't make sense too much to do that. The easiest project to do is to demo the whole site. I think, in my opinion, is that if you really wanted to save these buildings, if they were contributing, we should have just said all 3 buildings cannot be demoed and they should be saved and they should be built. They should be renovated the way that as existing structures. But if you start to dissect these buildings, in my opinion, I feel like you're going to go into a Disneyfication sort of development again, and you have a building that has these weird patches on it. My opinion, you're sort of bastardizing the historic character of that building and that street, and you're at this point not giving the opportunity for this thing to actually succeed later down the road. So my opinion actually is still like if you're only going to save one side of the building and one piece of the building, you should save the other side too, or all the buildings, or just demo everything. So in my position today is if it were to be remotion, I would say at this point there's no point in saving anything. In my opinion, you just have to let these buildings go. They have to move forward to the next process, which is the design concept, which I know that it will have a process and a long-term process, and I don't think it's going to be a very easy process for them to so I think there's that. Otherwise, I don't believe in saving one facade or one piece of a building.
I think we should save them all.
I think we should save them all, but I think
we should have saved the corner one too,
I think
but
that boat
you
has
guys-
sailed. But
Well,
I mean,
I
so
got
I,
outvoted.
yeah,
until they tear down the one on the corner, I don't know that it has. But
yeah.
I just want to say, I don't really all of this information that was submitted to us. I just went back to read what was submitted on the structural analysis for the August meeting, and it clearly shows that 114 is a wood-framed building, and it's not. I've been in it. I saw the steel beams.
That's why I
So
asked
I
if
mean,
there
like
was an
when
updated
we're
report.
talking about credibility of the analysis and what's being put forward, I just find it very suspect. That block of Lexington is 100% intact. And that is what the five and dime is. And I do not understand why we want to start carving it up. And I'm sorry I missed August, so I'm a little bitter about it.
Me too.
But, I just don't, and if that makes that project not happen, fine. And if that means that we're going to lose these buildings to deterioration, I would rather run that risk and lose them that way than give permission to destroy this really fantastic fabric in our city. And there's plenty of other land out there.
But think about that. I mean, I'm not arguing. I'm just having a discussion.
Yeah, I know.
We say, okay, the developer moves on. I mean, again, what is that indefinite time frame now for these buildings?
I think that there is a tremendous amount of value and untapped economic potential in this scale of architecture, and that has been well studied by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and they have economic data in their reports that you can get online on their website. Older, smaller, better. That is where entrepreneurs flourish. That's where businesses that are typically have been disadvantaged flourish. This is what really makes civic space, not another CVS size footprint.
I agree with you, and I share that. I wish I could share the optimism.
Well, I think the only way we can do it is to fight the fight, right? Throw in the towel. We're never going to get it.
I don't know if it's throwing in the towel. I mean, again, I think there's got to be some kind of place where you go. I don't think anybody's saying we're demoing the entire city. I think that the city's fabric is broad, and I will sit down with Johns Hopkins all day long to say, I agree with everything you say about these buildings should be retained, they should be contributing, and they should be saved,
But we already made it a district, and in making it a district, we encumbered these properties. And I think it's our responsibility to honor and withhold the encumberment. And it was fully out there when they were bought, that it was in the market, just in the Five-Dime district, so.
like I said, the story was written. I mean,
I agree the
problem-
bundles, but maybe BDC will learn, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you guys can sit here and argue
Yeah,
about it
sorry.
for forever.
No,
Go
I
forever.
appreciated the conversation.
I do just want to say, and I definitely missed you at the meeting because I think there were only a couple of us that objected to the demolition of the corner building. But ultimately, the commission voted to approve that, and I do think that's unfortunate. But that said, while from a developer perspective, I understand trying to make the numbers work. Ann's point is valid about the idea of being able to build smaller developments. And there is a lot of data to back that up. So I'd also say to the gentleman from Harbor Bank, I would encourage your financial institution to look at the financials that have been put together by the National Park Service and the benefit of smaller developments, and that the fact that neighborhoods can thrive with not just all of the big developments. Do we still have a quorum, Mr. Chairman? Yeah, we do.
The answer is yes.
Okay, so, we haven't heard from Peter or Dr. Rodwell or Tamara. Do you guys have any thoughts?
I disagree with the determination, would like to see both of those buildings retained.
Okay, so I would like, I'll second it.
Hold on one second. Do we have
Go
a
ahead.
discussion? We'll make sure there's discussion.
Oh, you guys
Go
can-
ahead. You just
Well,
asked
then he made his
Well, hold
motion.
on. You asked Doctor.
You asked
But-
my opinion. That's my opinion. And I would make that motion if we would care to go that route.
No, when you said that, you mentioned Doc, we had to go back to Doc. Go right ahead.
I think that if there is an opportunity to preserve these buildings, given the fact that it is in the Five-Dime district, and that they're, according to the National Historic Trust, there are options that could be funded for smaller development. I think that we should keep those things in mind as we make our decisions, and I would prefer to see us continue to seek options for development in that block, particularly in that block, because the city has kind of said that to us, you know? So that's where I am.
Gotcha.
But I've been listening to you all as the architects around the table, which I find myself doing a lot, so that's a good thing.
Anyone else?
I don't really have a lot to say other than, in terms of the discourse, I've been listening as well, and I actually agree with Commissioner Lynn that the ship has sailed in some ways. I do think that, it's a hard balance in a lot of ways. It's a hard balance, and I think that I've heard enough, and based on past decisions from this commission, the loss of the corner building has made it hard to do the bookends. And for the future viability of, I will say, existing residents or future residents, that we probably need to look forward to something. And I'm not going into new design because I don't know what that is. I haven't even seen really a proposal, but the new design has to function for 2023 and beyond. And so with that, I definitely have my thoughts of how I would vote, but based on the discourse, I actually tend to agree with the Commissioner Lynn.
I mean, I would just point out, there was a building on the corner that came down and got replaced with this building. And, I had my reasoning for thinking that that's probably the heavier lift to convert that building into something that this developer wants to do, which is why I voted the way I did. But I don't think that saying they can tear down a corner building automatically throws out the other two. I think you can still do two nice small-scale buildings with this added bonus of your 21st century building right on the corner. So my vote, of course, would still be to ask them to retain that. I don't think that the information they've provided has swayed me that it's totally infeasible to save those buildings.
That's the only thing I was going to add, Peter. I was hoping that I was going to see something different, and being brutally honest, I didn't see anything significantly different. What I did appreciate was the conversation, and of course, Ann giving us her insight of actually walking in the building, right, and seeing that. Go ahead, Tamara.
No, I think, and this is just thought. We talk a lot about what a future proposal would be, and this is across the board and not necessarily for this particular one, but we don't review them together. So when you're talking about demolition, you're talking about what could be, when clearly we're talking about a developer who has a proposal. So when we are, I would say the reality of development, period, in the city is most people don't come for a demolition hearing unless they have a proposal. Maybe sometimes it happens, sometimes it's needed, but I think it's a little sometimes disingenuous, and I get why you separate them as well. But I also think like it's hard for us to say or base the saving of a building based on, no, right, but we haven't reviewed it. And so that's the difference. Like we haven't reviewed the proposal for new construction, so.
And you make a good
And
point
I-
because,
and
go
I
ahead, I'm
get-
sorry.
I get both reasons. I get both sides of why.
Well, let me share this. When I mean review, I mean, we all are privileged to get a lot of this information beforehand. So to add to what I mentioned, I thought I was going to see more with that. To your point, when it goes to Eric and his team, it's more in depth. It's more in depth. And so you're right. But from what I saw, I didn't see anything uniquely different from last time compared to this time. I do appreciate the bank being here. I do appreciate the new architect, but that's the only thing I would comment on.
Structural engineering.
Structural engineer, thank you.
But I still think that there's I think that's something we gotta deal with when we get to procedures, eventually, but I still think it's, as a procedural thing, to ask for hardship with financial and structural engineering, it's just very, very one-sided, It's like, I feel like, who's gonna come into this room and present to you something that says, oh, we did look at it, we're good, we're actually gonna be all right? And as a developer as myself, your numbers can be done, every time it's gonna be that it's not gonna be feasible, it's not gonna be structurally, so any structural engineer would jump to the opportunity to say that this is a very dangerous building, this is a building that's not gonna be salvaged. So my thinking is that there's a flaw there. Like, I don't know if you're, and then we go, okay, yeah, so that's their numbers say it doesn't work. Okay, so my feelings, I don't know, even in that process, I don't understand that. But I guess my last thing I'll just say is that, that to be aware that, I'd approve, whatever happens here does not affect an approval for the next phase. They will have to go through a design process now, right? I mean, assuming there's gonna be design 1, 2, whatever, however many. I think a project like this should go to UDAP in addition, not just us. So I think that this is a determination at one point that everybody has to say, hey, whatever everybody decides to vote on, whatever they believe in, is what it is. And that's what happens, but know that this is just one step. They will have to go through a design process. So what you're seeing, and on your screen, I have a guarantee that that's not gonna be something that you're gonna see at the end of the day.
No, but it is dated July 12th before any hearing, and so the goal was always to get them all torn down.
I agree.
And
That's the problem. The goal was always to, that's why, coming back with financials and structurals, the goal was always to knock these things down. So unless we say, hey, we don't want that, at the first one, we should have said, this is.
Yeah,
this is
I
not
just,
gonna
I
be-
just, I just want to
and then
remind the
continue
commission that
the
we should
overall
be very careful about putting thoughts in the applicant's mind. When we say things like that, that we could be on legal shaky grounds and things. So let's make sure that we deliberate based on the facts that we have at hand and not on.
Well, so I'm just saying, I think there's a larger continued discussion which shouldn't sidetrack the vote that we need to do to wrap up this item. But to that point, I've brought up, and I think other commissioners have brought up, our desire to really dig into this issue. And we really need time to dig into it. And I think our short briefing sessions before these meetings are not sufficient time. So I think this is definitely something that we need to dig into. But in the meantime, Peter, do you want to put forth the motion so we can wrap up this item? Because we still have a new business item we need to bring up too.
Sure, I would move to deny staff's recommendation and for demolition of those two buildings.
Do I have a second?
Second, or go ahead, Ian.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any
Hang on, y'all are going too quick for me now.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll say that one more time. Any opposed? We had one opposed. Okay, two opposed. We had two opposed.
But I thought we were going to, I thought you said there's going to be another hearing on
What the
this.
motion is to go against CHAP staff. And
Disapprove
to
demolition.
Disapprove demolition.
Okay,
And
hold on.
the
Let's
next-
do this.
That's
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's start over. Start over.
Yeah, we should do roll call.
I move to deny staff's recommendation and disapprove of demolition.
Do I have a second?
And just to be clear.
Yes,
about-
sir.
It's about those two properties, both properties.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We had two hands raised. We had Catherine and we had Ann.
Ian can have the second.
Okay. All in favor?
Well, I thought we were gonna roll call.
I'm just saying it. I'm just going down the list. All in favor? All opposed? We got one opposed. Any abstain? Okay, let's do a roll call. I know, I got it.
What's the point of doing
I gotta
both?
do it.
Aye, yeah.
It's gone. Morrow is 4. Oh, and there's Catherine Good.
4
Commissioner Powell.
is not here.
Powell.
Oh, okay.
Who's the second? Yeah, that's right. The power is on, but Commissioner Rodwell. 4. All right, so let's see what we got. 1. Did I miss anybody? 1, 2.
Yeah, wait.
No, you were against.
I know, but you never called me.
You never called
roll
her
call.
That's what happens
I
after.
did that last time, didn't I?
You just can't.
I just read your mind, that's all.
We still have a new business item. I don't want us to forget about it. Whoops, as I break things over here.
So wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need to vote.
Yep,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's why I asked if we had a quorum.
he is the quorum.
3:37.
We have a tie or a quorum? The key was the quorum.
The Q was the quorum, right?
Against.
Against. All right, so basically.
The f- It's still 4 to 2.
3, 4, 5, you're right.
5 to 2.
5 is the majority of the quorum. Going back, yeah.
Wait, can you, so the ayes carry?
The ayes carry.
All right, so new business, because I don't want to forget that from earlier today,
It's
like
5:15.
hours
I
ago.
just want to say thank you, Catherine, for moving us forward to make this decision on this particular piece. We do have a lot of policy thinking.
Do you have your mic on? We're still recording, aren't we?
And we really do need to figure this out because Commissioner Lynn, I think you're absolutely right. People are saying, how can we trust the information given us to by an applicant who submits a demolition application? It's already favorable to that demolition. So we have to figure out how to deal with that. But I also have to say, we could hire a consultant, but that's going to cost money. And if that's going to cost money, then we're going to have to go to mayor and city council and ask for more in our budget. And that has its own problems with things too. But
So I
if
do
there are
know,
ways to do it, we used to have Commissioner French that was on board, and he was the developer that would review all this stuff for us, and he would say, yeah, these numbers look in the ballpark.
so we have, I know other commissions that do retain independent on-call consultants for exactly these kinds of scenarios. So,
And our Article 6 of the city code does allow us to retain as well. We just don't have the budget for it.
Right.
I mean, not to shake up the whole process, but demo 1, 2, and then go into design. I agree. I don't know if you were saying this in particular earlier, but I don't know why they're so disparate.
I could tell you
I mean-
exactly why.
Okay.
I mean, you want to hear now, or do you
Let's
want me
do
to?
it. No, maybe we should do it another time. But
The 30-second thing is, we had Dick Dunkervold came in and wanted to do a demolition. Do you guys remember Dick Dunkervold? Okay, I'm dating myself, yes. He came in and he got approval to demolish 3 beautiful row houses on Charles Street, right? Thank you, Mr. Gunn. See, that was it all. He is the history man. Yeah, but and he wooed the commission with his brand-new plans, and the commission couldn't get away from these plans he were gonna do, so he demolishes the building, and the lot sat like that for what, 20, 30 years?
and I think that's why you have to separate it. I think it's good to have an idea of what's coming, but you have to separate it for exactly that reason, because the demolition can happen and then there's nothing new happening. But that said, Eric, it doesn't address the problem that we're having significantly in some of these areas, which is they get the approval to demo, and then they get the required approval for the new plans. They start the project, they start the demolition, or it freezes and it starts demoing by neglect, and then nothing is being happen. And so that's the tricky part, because they can go through the process and get everything that we require and get the new permits done and get the new plan approved, and then start and demolish, and then the project tanks. And that's exactly what happened at Hendler. And that's, it's a similar but different area of kind of demolition by neglect. But, in that case, a project was approved and then they demoed and neglected, versus just having what we're seeing at like 207, 209 that we just saw. And that is literal demolition by neglect, because the long-term owners did not care for the building. And so that's where we need to pursue, and let's see if I say this right, that CHAP staff needs to begin to look into what other options we have or maybe can put into place for pursuing owners who have demolition by neglect. Did I say that right?
Well, that's
From earlier?
because we need to go back to
Yeah.
what we.
That's what I want to make sure.
This is what I was
get
going,
it.
just for a point of clarity, because I wanted to make sure that with the vote, that when I did not mean to say, I meant to say against for staff. It was not, I did not mean to say against for the motion that was on the floor. I want to make that correction publicly.
Oh,
That's what I meant. I was thinking about what was on the board.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
Surprised.
Right, because after listening to it, right, with the majority, I got my mind twisted. It was not, I'm with.
Okay, well,
But since we're still on record, I wanted to say that publicly, okay? But now.
both ways, so I don't know.
No, either way, but what I wanted to do was we have to go into old business or new business, right,
Right.
Eric?
Right. and the new
We need
business
to do
is
the new,
water.
yeah.
That's what we're doing right now, Catherine. That's what we're doing right now.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's what I'm trying to say. So, we want to direct CHAP staff to examine options to put in place for, pursuing recompense for owners who demo by neglect on their structures. Did I say that right?
Or you say strengthen the demolition.
Strengthen the demolition clause in our ordinance.
Perfect. Right.
So,
By need to look at other cities that maybe have options or other things that we can legally pursue based on existing ordinances, and it may involve city council or other things.
You got it.
Go forth and
You got
look.
it. Okay, any new business?
That was the new business.
Oh, no, anything else? Any old business, we're fine. I call this meeting to adjourn. What time you have, Eric? Because my watch is off.
5:22.
5:20.